The Texas sun hung low over the Mitchell family ranch, painting the sky in shades of amber and crimson that would have made any painter weep. 6-year-old Emma Mitchell sat on the porch swing, her small legs dangling, not quite reaching the weathered wooden planks below. In her hands, she clutched a crayon drawing of 3 stick figures: a tall man in green, a woman with a rifle, and a little girl between them holding both their hands. Inside the farmhouse kitchen, Sarah Mitchell stood at the counter, her calloused fingers tracing the edges of an official envelope. The Department of Defense seal seemed to burn through the paper. Across from her, Captain David Mitchell, her husband of 8 years, held an identical envelope. Their eyes met over the kitchen table that had witnessed 1,000 family dinners, 1,000 quiet mornings, 1,000 moments of ordinary American life that was about to become extraordinary once again. Neither spoke for a long moment. The only sound was the rhythmic creak of Emma's swing outside and the distant call of a mockingbird claiming its territory in the gathering dusk. David broke the silence first, his voice steady and measured in the way only a Green Beret could manage when staring down deployment orders. 12 months, Northern Iraq. I ship out in 2 weeks. Sarah nodded slowly, setting her envelope beside his. Her own orders were nearly identical, save for one critical detail. I leave 4 weeks after you. Same sector, different mission. The irony was not lost on either of them. They had met at Fort Benning 9 years ago, both young soldiers hungry to prove themselves in a world that still questioned whether women belonged in combat roles. Sarah had been the only female in advanced sniper training. David had been assigned to Special Forces assessment and selection. They had bonded over early morning runs, shared exhaustion, and a mutual understanding that service to country was not just a job, but a calling written into the very fabric of who they were. Now, as the sun dipped below the horizon and shadows stretched long across their kitchen floor, they faced a truth that millions of military families understood but never quite grew comfortable with. War did not care about your marriage, your children, or the life you had built in the peaceful spaces between deployments. War simply came calling, and if you wore the uniform, you answered. David moved around the table and pulled Sarah close, his arms wrapping around her slender frame. At 5'7" and 135 pounds, she looked nothing like the stereotypical image of an elite sniper. But appearances had always deceived when it came to Sarah Mitchell. What she lacked in physical size, she compensated for with a mind that calculated wind drift, bullet drop, and target movement with the precision of a Swiss chronometer. Emma needs to know, Sarah whispered against his chest. We have to tell her together. Tonight, after dinner, we make it simple, honest. She's strong, just like her mother. Sarah pulled back slightly, meeting his eyes. Green eyes that had seen combat in Afghanistan, Syria, and a dozen classified locations he could never discuss. Eyes that had watched friends die and enemies fall. Eyes that somehow still held warmth when they looked at her and their daughter. We pray first, Sarah said, as a family. Then we tell her. It was not a question. Faith had been the bedrock of their relationship from the beginning, the foundation upon which they had built a marriage that could withstand the unique pressures of dual military service. God, country, family. In that order, it was the only way they knew how to live. 30 minutes later, the three of them sat around the dinner table. Emma had insisted on setting out her best plastic plates, the ones with the cartoon characters that she had received for her 6th birthday 3 months earlier. A simple meal of grilled chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans sat before them. Food that had sustained American families for generations. David reached out his hands, and Sarah and Emma joined him, completing the circle. Heavenly Father, David began, his voice carrying the weight of a prayer spoken by countless soldiers before countless deployments. We thank you for this food, for this family, for this life you've given us. We ask for your protection over Sarah and me as we prepare to serve. We ask for your strength for Emma. We ask for wisdom to do what's right, courage to face what comes, and faith to trust in your plan. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen, Sarah and Emma echoed. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the kind of quiet that comes from familiarity and love. Emma chattered about her day at school, about the new playground equipment, about her best friend Jessica, who could do a cartwheel without falling over. Normal. Beautifully, perfectly normal. Then David set down his fork and looked at his daughter with the same directness he would give to any soldier under his command. Honesty and respect, regardless of age. Emma, sweetheart, your mom and I need to talk to you about something important. The little girl's eyes went wide, flicking between her parents with the intuitive wisdom that children possess. That ability to sense when the adults in their lives are about to change everything. Daddy has to go away for work, David continued, to a place far away where some bad people are hurting good people. My job is to help protect the good people. Emma's lower lip trembled slightly, but she did not cry. Not yet. For how long? About a year, baby girl. Now the tears came, sliding down her round cheeks. Sarah reached over and took Emma's small hand in her own. And I'll be going too, Emma, a few weeks after Daddy, to the same place. We'll both be doing important work. But who will take care of me? Emma's voice cracked, and Sarah felt her own heart fracture along the same fault lines. Grandma Margaret is coming to stay with you. You remember Grandma Margaret, Colonel Dawson's wife? She's wonderful and kind, and she's going to live here at the ranch while we're gone. Emma sniffled, wiping her nose with the back of her hand in that unself-conscious way children have. She looked down at her plate, processing information that no 6-year-old should have to process, but that countless military children did every single day. Why do you have to go? Why can't someone else go? It was David who answered, leaning forward so his face was level with his daughter's. Because freedom isn't free, sweetheart. Your mama and I, we serve because good people need protecting. We fight so you don't have to, so you can go to school and play with your friends and grow up in a country that's safe and free. That's what soldiers do. We answer the call when our country needs us. Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked up at her mother with eyes that suddenly seemed older than 6 years had any right to be. Will you be shooting the bad people, Mommy? Sarah did not flinch from the question. She had learned long ago that children deserve truth, delivered with age-appropriate care, but truth nonetheless. If I have to, yes. My job is to protect our soldiers from far away, to watch over them and keep them safe. Like a guardian angel. The words hung in the air between them. Sarah glanced at David, saw the slight nod of approval, and turned back to Emma. Yes, baby, exactly like a guardian angel. Emma seemed to accept this. She picked up her fork and took another bite of mashed potatoes. The resilience of childhood already beginning to assert itself. Okay, she said quietly, but you have to promise to come home. Sarah felt her throat tighten. It was a promise no soldier could truly make. Not with certainty, not with the absolute guarantee that a child needed. But it was a promise every soldier made anyway, because the alternative was to leave your child without hope. We promise, Emma. We're coming home. The rest of dinner passed with lighter conversation. They talked about the ranch, about the horses that would need tending, about how Emma would help Grandma Margaret with the garden. They talked about video calls and care packages and the letters they would write. They did not talk about the statistics, the casualty rates in the northern Iraqi sector, the increasing sophistication of enemy tactics, the fact that American patrols were being systematically hunted and killed by someone who understood military tactics better than they had any right to. Those conversations would come later, in briefings and classified reports. For now, there was just a family at a kitchen table, holding on to ordinary moments before they scattered across a war-torn world. After Emma had been tucked into bed, after Sarah had read 3 chapters of Charlotte's Web and kissed her daughter's forehead and turned on the nightlight shaped like a star, she found David on the back porch. He stood at the railing, looking out over the darkened fields that stretched toward the horizon. She moved beside him, and his arm automatically wrapped around her shoulders. She's stronger than she knows, David said softly. She shouldn't have to be. No, but she's our daughter. Strength is in her DNA. Sarah leaned her head against his shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of him, memorizing it against the months of separation ahead. I'm scared, David, not of the deployment, not of the mission. I'm scared of what it might do to us, to her. He turned to face her fully, both hands on her shoulders now, forcing her to meet his eyes in the dim light spilling from the kitchen window. Listen to me, Sarah Mitchell. We are not the first military couple to deploy to the same theater. We won't be the last. Emma will be fine because she comes from a line of strong women who know how to weather storms. You will be fine because you are the best sniper I've ever seen, and you don't miss. I will be fine because I've got the guardian angel herself watching my back. He kissed her then, slow and deep, a kiss that carried 8 years of marriage and the uncertain promise of 12 months apart. We're going to get through this, he whispered against her lips. We're going to do our jobs with honor. We're going to save lives, and we're going to come home to our daughter and pick up right where we left off. That's not hope, Sarah. That's the plan, and we don't deviate from the plan. She nodded against his chest, letting his certainty anchor her own wavering resolve. They stood there until the stars came out in full force, painting the Texas sky with the same light that would soon shine over Iraqi deserts half a world away. The next morning, Sarah drove to Fort Benning. Her official orders specified a 2-week transition period before deployment, time to ensure her affairs were in order and to complete pre-deployment briefings. But first, she had a class to teach. The sniper training facility sat on the eastern edge of the base, a collection of low buildings and carefully maintained ranges that stretched for over a mile. Sarah had been an instructor here for the past 18 months, one of only 3 female sniper instructors in the entire United States Army. She pulled into the parking lot just after 0600 hours, early enough to beat most of the staff, but late enough that the dedicated students would already be running morning physical training. Sure enough, she could see 24 soldiers in formation, counting off cadence as they ran past. Inside the main building, she found Sergeant First Class Marcus Chen already at work, updating range cards for the day's training evolution. Marcus looked up as she entered, his weathered face breaking into a grin. "Mitchell, thought you'd be home playing domestic goddess for a few more days. Orders came through. I deploy in 4 weeks." Marcus's grin faded slightly. He set down his pen and leaned back in his chair. "Iraq? Northern sector. Damn, that's getting hot. Lost 3 Ranger platoons to coordinated ambushes in the last month." Sarah nodded. She had read the intelligence reports, seen the casualty figures. The northern sector was rapidly becoming one of the most dangerous areas of operation in the entire theater. "David deploys in 2 weeks, same sector." Marcus let out a low whistle. "Military power couple heading into the meat grinder. Who's watching Emma?" "Margaret Dawson." At the mention of Colonel Dawson's wife, Marcus's expression shifted. Everyone who had gone through sniper training in the last decade knew Colonel William Dawson. Bull Dawson, as he was universally called, Vietnam veteran, legendary sniper, the man who had written half the doctrine they still taught today. "How's the colonel doing? Heard he was sick." Sarah's face tightened. "Cancer, stage 3, but he's not ready to retire just yet." "Bull Dawson never will be ready to retire. He'll die with a rifle in his hands if he has his way." The words were prophetic in ways neither of them could have known. Sarah spent the morning running her students through wind-reading drills. 23 soldiers, ranging from fresh-faced privates to seasoned sergeants, looking to add sniper qualification to their resume. Among them was Private Elena Torres, a 22-year-old from Los Angeles who had scored in the top 5% of her marksmanship test. Sarah watched Elena through the spotting scope as the young woman lined up her shot. 800 meters to target, wind at 7 miles per hour quartering from the right, temperature 72 degrees and rising. Elena made her adjustments with the careful precision of someone who understood that, at this distance, a single degree of error could mean missing by 3 feet. She settled into her shooting position, controlled her breathing, and squeezed the trigger with the kind of pressure that took months to master. The round flew true, impacting center mass on the silhouette target. "Hit!" Sarah called out. "Excellent wind reading, Torres." Again, same target. They ran through 15 more shots, and Elena hit 14 of them. Only one miss, and that was due to a sudden gust that caught her off guard. After the range went cold and the students were cleaning their weapons, Elena approached Sarah with the kind of nervous energy young soldiers get when they want to ask their instructor something personal. "Staff Sergeant Mitchell, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead, Torres." "Is it true you're deploying to Iraq?" Word traveled fast in the Army. Sarah should have expected the question. "It's true." "And is it true that you had the longest confirmed kill in the Afghanistan theater, 1,400 meters?" Sarah paused in her own weapon cleaning. That particular shot had happened 3 years ago, during her first deployment. A Taliban commander who had been orchestrating attacks on coalition forces. One shot, one kill, at a distance that should have been impossible with the equipment she had at the time. "Where did you hear that?" "The guys talk. They say you never miss. They say when you're on Overwatch, nobody dies." Sarah looked at the young woman, saw the hunger there, the desire to be that good, to matter in the way that every soldier wants to matter. "I miss, Torres. Everyone misses eventually. The key is to miss when it doesn't matter and to hit when it does. The key is preparation, practice, and understanding that every shot you take in combat has consequences. Good consequences when you protect your brothers and sisters in arms. Terrible consequences if you make a mistake." Elena nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of those words. I want to be like you, Staff Sergeant. I want to be good enough that when soldiers are in trouble, I'm the one they call. Sarah finished reassembling her rifle, snapped the bolt home with the familiar metallic click that she had heard thousands of times. Then keep practicing, keep learning, and understand that being a sniper isn't about the killing. It's about the saving. We're guardian angels, Torres. We watch over people who can't protect themselves. That's the job. Everything else is just math and trigger control. The phrase hung in the air between them. Guardian angels. It was the same description Emma had used the night before, and it struck Sarah as both perfectly accurate and terribly insufficient. Angels did not carry the weight of lives taken. Angels did not wake up at 3 in the morning remembering the faces in their scopes. Angels did not have to explain to a 6-year-old why mommy had to go away to shoot bad people. But angels also protect. They stood between the innocent and the darkness. And if that was the role Sarah had to play, she would play it with every ounce of skill and dedication she possessed. That afternoon, she received a call that would change everything. Staff Sergeant Mitchell, this is Lieutenant Colonel Harrison from Personnel. Colonel Dawson has requested your presence at his office at 1500 hours. He said it's regarding your deployment orders. Sarah glanced at her watch. 14:15. Just enough time to clean up and make the drive across base to the command building where Dawson kept his office. Colonel William Dawson had been her primary instructor during sniper school 4 years ago. At 62 years old, he should have been long retired. But the Army had a way of holding on to the men who were too valuable to lose. Dawson had served 3 tours in Vietnam, 2 in Iraq, and 1 in Afghanistan. His confirmed kill count was classified, but the rumors put it somewhere north of 80. More importantly, he had trained 3 generations of American snipers, each one carrying forward the philosophy he had developed over 4 decades of service. A sniper is a guardian angel, not a grim reaper. Sarah arrived at his office at 14:55, exactly 5 minutes early in the way good soldiers always were. She knocked twice on the doorframe. Enter. She stepped into the small office that smelled of gun oil, coffee, and old paper. Colonel Dawson sat behind his desk, and Sarah felt her breath catch slightly at his appearance. It had been 6 months since she had last seen him, and the cancer had clearly taken its toll. His face was gaunt, the skin stretched tight over prominent cheekbones. His eyes, though, those remained sharp and clear, the eyes of a hunter who had not yet conceded defeat to age or illness. Staff Sergeant Mitchell reporting as ordered, sir. Dawson gestured to the chair across from his desk. Sit down, Sarah. This isn't that kind of meeting. She sat, and he poured her a cup of coffee from the pot that was perpetually brewing on the filing cabinet behind him. Black, no sugar, exactly how she took it. He remembered. I read your orders, Dawson said without preamble. Northern Iraq, 4 weeks from now. Yes, sir. Your husband deploys 2 weeks before you. Green Beret, same sector. Yes, sir. Dawson leaned back in his chair, studying her with the intensity of someone who had spent a lifetime reading people through rifle scopes. The northern sector is a mess, Sarah. 3 Ranger platoons ambushed in the last month. 15 KIA, 23 wounded. The enemy up there isn't some ragtag militia playing soldier. They've got training, discipline, and someone smart calling the shots. I've read the intelligence reports, sir. Then you know this deployment is going to test you in ways you haven't been tested before. Sarah met his gaze steadily. I'm ready, sir. A slight smile played at the corners of Dawson's mouth. I know you are. That's why I made a call, pulled some strings, used up some favors I've been saving for the right moment. He slid a folder across the desk. Sarah opened it and felt her heart rate increase as she scanned the contents. New orders, modified deployment parameters, special assignment under the direct command of Colonel William Dawson. Sir, I don't understand. You're not scheduled for deployment. Your medical status is exactly why I'm going, Dawson interrupted. Stage 3 cancer. Treatments are barely holding it at bay. Doctors give me maybe 18 months if I'm lucky. I've got 2 options, Sarah. I can sit in some hospital bed and let this disease eat me alive while I watch daytime television and feel sorry for myself. Or I can go out the way I came in, on my feet, with a rifle in my hands, doing what I was born to do. Sarah felt a lump forming in her throat. She had known Colonel Dawson was sick. She had not known it was this bad. I leave in 2 weeks, Dawson continued. I've been assigned command of Northern Sector Operations. My job is to unfuck the tactical situation up there before we lose any more good men. Your job is to be my guardian angel. You'll have full autonomy, hand-picked team, an authorization to engage targets of opportunity as you see fit. He paused, letting the weight of the assignment sink in. This is my last mission, Sarah. My last chance to make a difference. I need the best shooter I ever trained watching my back. I need someone who understands what we're really doing out there. Protecting people, saving lives, being the angels that desperate men pray for when the bullets are flying and hope is running thin. Sarah felt tears threatening at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them back. Soldiers did not cry in their commanding officer's presence, even when that officer was offering them the greatest honor of their career. I'm in, sir, whatever you need. Dawson nodded as if he had never doubted her answer. He pulled out another folder, this one thicker, filled with maps and intelligence reports. Then let's talk about what we're walking into, because where we're going, guardian angels are in short supply, and the devils, well, they've been having their way for far too long. They spent the next 2 hours going over tactical situations, enemy capabilities, and the specific challenges of the northern sector. Dawson explained that the enemy had developed a sophisticated network of observation posts, allowing them to track American movements with frightening precision. Every patrol route was monitored. Every weakness was exploited. They're hunting us, Sarah, systematically, professionally, and until we find whoever is coordinating these attacks and take them off the board, our boys are going to keep dying in ambushes they never see coming. What about air support, artillery? Limited. The enemy is smart enough to operate in areas where we can't bring heavy firepower without civilian casualties. They know our rules of engagement better than we do. They use them against us. Sarah studied the maps, her mind already working through angles, distances, and firing positions. This was what she had trained for. This was where mathematics met morality, where the precise science of ballistics served the higher purpose of protecting American lives. I'll need Marcus Chen as my spotter, she said. We've worked together for 2 years. He knows how I shoot. Already approved. He's on the manifest. Anyone else? Sarah thought for a moment. Private Elena Torres. She's green, but she's got potential. Good fundamentals. Quick learner. She could use the experience. Dawson made a note. I'll see what I can do. But Torres stays stateside for now. This first rotation is going to be brutal. And I need proven shooters, not students still learning the trade. If this deployment goes long, maybe we bring her in for the second wave. It made sense tactically, even if Sarah felt a twinge of disappointment. Elena reminded her of herself at that age, hungry and determined. But Dawson was right. War was not a classroom. Understood, sir. They wrapped up the briefing just after 1700 hours. As Sarah stood to leave, Dawson called her back. One more thing, Sarah. My wife Margaret is going to be staying with Emma while you and David are deployed. Sarah turned, surprised. Sir, that's incredibly generous, but Margaret doesn't have to. She wants to, insists on it actually. Said she's been an Army wife for 40 years, and she knows what it's like trying to focus on the mission when you're worried about what's happening at home. Emma will be in good hands. Margaret raised 3 kids while I was off playing soldier. She can handle one more. Sarah felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. Having Margaret Dawson, someone who understood military life, someone connected to the mission, watch over Emma made the impossible situation slightly less impossible. Thank you, sir. That means more than you know. Dawson stood, moving around his desk with the slightly stiff gait of someone fighting both age and illness. He extended his hand and Sarah shook it firmly. 2 weeks, Staff Sergeant Mitchell. Then we go to work. Then we show these bastards what American snipers can do when we're properly motivated. Yes, sir, I'll be ready. As Sarah drove back to her quarters, the Texas sun once again painting the sky in shades of fire, she felt the weight of what was coming settle onto her shoulders. Not fear exactly. Something more profound, a sense of purpose crystallizing into absolute clarity. She was going to war. Not as a student, not as an instructor, safely behind the lines. She was going to war as the tip of the spear, the guardian angel that soldiers would pray for when death came calling. And she was going with the man who had taught her everything she knew about the profession of arms. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Medical checkups, gear inspections, endless paperwork, video calls with Emma, trying to store up enough memories to last a year. Quiet nights with David, both of them carefully not talking about the statistical likelihood that one or both of them might not come home. Margaret Dawson arrived at the ranch 3 days before David's departure. She was a slender woman with silver hair and eyes that had seen too many deployments, too many flag-draped coffins, Too many folded flags presented with white glove precision. But she was also strong in the way that military spouses had to be strong, forged in the fires of sacrifice and separation. Emma took to her immediately, drawn by Margaret's gentle competence and seemingly infinite patience for tea parties and picture books. On David's last night before deployment, after Emma had been put to bed and Margaret had diplomatically retired to the guest room, Sarah and her husband sat on the back porch under a canopy of stars. "Promise me something," David said quietly. "Anything. Promise me you'll come home. Not for me, for Emma. She needs her mother." Sarah turned to look at him, seeing the fear he usually kept locked away behind the professional soldier facade. "I promise, and you promise me the same thing." "Deal." They sealed it with a kiss that tasted of salt and sorrow, and the bitter knowledge that some promises, no matter how earnestly made, were beyond any soldier's power to keep. The next morning, Sarah drove David to the base. They did not speak much during the drive. There was nothing left to say that had not been said in 1,000 different ways over the past 2 weeks. At the deployment staging area, among hundreds of other soldiers saying goodbye to loved ones, David pulled Sarah close one last time. "I love you, Sarah Mitchell. You're the best thing that ever happened to Biden. Happened to me. I love you too. Stay safe. Watch your six. Always. And you better be watching mine from a mile away when we're both over there." She managed a smile. "Count on it." Then he was gone, swallowed up by the massive soldiers boarding the transport planes that would carry them halfway around the world to a desert war that seemed to have no end and no clear purpose beyond the protection of the men standing beside you. Sarah watched until the planes were distant specks in the clear morning sky. Then she drove back to the ranch, back to Emma, back to the 2 weeks she had left before it was her turn to answer the call. Those final 2 weeks crawled by with agonizing slowness. Sarah threw herself into training, running longer, shooting more, pushing her body and mind to the edge of exhaustion so she would not have to think about what was coming. Elena Torres often joined her on the range, and Sarah found herself taking extra time with the young private, passing along lessons Dawson had taught her, techniques refined through years of practice. "Why do you do it?" Elena asked one afternoon as they were cleaning their rifles after a particularly grueling session. "Do what?" "Risk everything. Leave your daughter. Go into combat when you could stay here and teach. You've proven yourself already. You could coast to retirement." Sarah paused in her cleaning, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. Because if not me, then who? If the best shooters stay home where it's safe, who protects the soldiers who don't have a choice? Who watches over the 18-year-old kids from small towns who joined up because they wanted to serve their country and now find themselves in kill zones with enemies they can't see? She set down her cleaning rod and looked directly at Elena. "I do this because I can, because I have a gift, and gifts are meant to be used in service of something larger than yourself. I do this because somewhere in Iraq right now, there's a ranger platoon that's going to walk into an ambush tomorrow, or next week, or next month. And maybe, just maybe, if I'm there and I'm good enough and I'm lucky enough, I can be the difference between those boys going home in a casket or going home to their own families." Elena nodded slowly, and Sarah could see the understanding dawning in her eyes. The realization that being a soldier was not about glory or medals or proving yourself. It was about the guy next to you. It was about the sacred obligation to protect those who could not protect themselves. "I want to be that good someday," Elena said quietly. "I want to matter like that." "Then keep training, keep learning, and when your time comes, be ready to answer the call." 2 days before Sarah's own deployment, Colonel Dawson invited her and Margaret and Emma to dinner at his home on base. It was a simple affair, grilled steaks and corn on the cob, but it felt significant in ways that had nothing to do with the food. Dawson regaled Emma with sanitized stories from his Vietnam days, tales of camaraderie and adventure that carefully omitted the horror and blood. Emma listened with wide eyes, seeing her mother's mentor as some kind of real-life superhero. After dinner, while Margaret and Emma washed dishes and giggled over some private joke, Dawson and Sarah stepped out onto his back deck. "Tomorrow I fly out," Dawson said, his eyes scanning the horizon as if he could see all the way to Iraq. "Day after tomorrow you follow. 48 hours and we'll be in the sandbox." "Yes, sir." "I've been thinking about why I'm really doing this, going back one more time, and I've come to understand something." He turned to look at her, and in the fading light, Sarah could see both the vibrant young soldier he had been and the dying old man he was becoming. "Legacy, Sarah. That's what this is about. Not my legacy, but the legacy of what we represent. The guardian angels, the protectors. I need to know that when I'm gone, there will be someone carrying forward what I tried to build. Someone who understands that the rifle is just a tool. The mission is everything, and the mission is always, always about saving lives. Sarah felt her throat tighten with emotion. You taught me that, sir. You taught me everything that matters. Then teach it to others. Teach it to Torres. Teach it to the next generation of shooters who come up behind you. Make sure they understand that we don't do this job because we love killing. We do it because we love protecting. There's a difference, a crucial fundamental difference. He gripped her shoulder with surprising strength for a man being eaten alive by cancer. This is my last mission, Sarah. Make it count. Help me go out knowing that I made a difference one final time. Yes, sir, I will, I promise. The next morning, Sarah stood at the airport with Emma and Margaret, watching Colonel Dawson board his flight. He moved with the careful deliberation of someone rationing their remaining strength, but his back was straight and his head was high. A soldier to the end. That night, Sarah could not sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, running through every drill, every calculation, every lesson she had ever learned. Tomorrow she would leave Emma. Tomorrow she would begin the longest 12 months of her life. At 0300 hours, she gave up on sleep and went to her gun safe. She removed her personal rifle, a customized M110 that she had spent years perfecting. Every component had been selected for maximum performance. Every surface had been touched by her hands so many times that the weapon felt like an extension of her own body. She stripped it in the darkness, her fingers moving with practiced certainty, and cleaned it one final time. As she worked, she thought about David, already in Iraq, already in harm's way. She thought about Dawson, dying but determined to serve one last time. She thought about Emma, sleeping peacefully in her room, innocent and safe in a world that her parents were preparing to fight for. And she thought about the unknown soldiers she would protect, the rangers in green berets and infantry grunts who would walk into danger never knowing that someone was watching over them from a mile away. Her guardian angels. Just before dawn, as the first gray light began to paint the eastern sky, Sarah heard a soft sound behind her. She turned to find Emma standing in the doorway, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Mommy, are you leaving today?" Sarah set down her rifle and opened her arms. Emma ran to her, and Sarah held her daughter close, breathing in the scent of strawberry shampoo and childhood innocence. "Yes, baby, today I have to go. Will you really be a guardian angel, like you said?" Sarah pulled back enough to look into her daughter's eyes. "I'll try, Emma. I'll try my very best to watch over the soldiers and keep them safe." Emma was quiet for a moment. Then she pressed something into Sarah's hand. It was the crayon drawing from the porch swing, the one with the stick, figures holding hands. "Take this with you, so you remember to come home." Sarah felt tears sliding down her cheeks, and this time she did not try to stop them. "I'll keep it with me always. And I'll come home, Emma, I promise." It was a promise she intended to keep, no matter what hell waited for her in the Iraqi desert. 12 hours later, Sarah Mitchell boarded a C-17 cargo plane at Fort Benning. The massive aircraft was packed with soldiers, equipment, in the heavy silence of men and women heading into combat. She found a seat near the back, strapped herself in, and closed her eyes as the engines roared to life. The plane lifted off, banking west and then south, beginning the long journey that would take her across an ocean and into a war zone where American soldiers were dying at an alarming rate, where Colonel Bull Dawson was planning his final mission, where her husband David was already on the ground, hunting terrorists in the unforgiving desert, where she would become the legend that desperate men whispered about when death came calling. The guardian angel. But that story was still unwritten. The legend was still forming, and in the cargo hold of a military transport aircraft somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean, Staff Sergeant Sarah Mitchell did not yet know that in exactly 47 days, she would fire 37 shots in 4 minutes and save 18 American lives. She did not know that those 4 minutes would define her career, haunt her dreams, and prove to a skeptical world that guardian angels were real. She only knew that she was going to war, and that when she got there, she would do what Colonel Dawson had trained her to do. She would watch, she would wait, she would calculate wind and distance, and the precise moment when one well-placed round could mean the difference between a soldier going home or going into the ground. She would be the invisible protector, the silent guardian, the angel with a rifle who never, ever missed when it mattered most. The plane droned on through the darkness, carrying Sarah Mitchell toward her destiny and toward a truth that every warrior eventually learns, that the hardest part of being a guardian angel is not the killing. It's the saving and the terrible, beautiful burden of knowing that your finger on a trigger, your eye behind a scope, your breath held at the exact right moment might be the only thing standing between a mother's son and a folded flag. Sarah pulled out Emma's drawing and traced the crayon lines with one finger. 3 stick figures, a family, a promise, a reason to come home. She folded it carefully and tucked it into the pocket over her heart, right where it would stay for the next 12 months, through the heat and blood and horror of combat, a talisman against the darkness. Outside the aircraft, the stars wheeled overhead, cold and distant and indifferent to the small dramas of human conflict playing out below. But Sarah Mitchell was not looking at stars. She was thinking about angles and wind speed and the sacred mathematics of keeping people alive. She was thinking about the guardian angels. And somewhere in the Iraqi desert, though she did not know it yet, soldiers were already whispering prayers that someone, anyone, was watching over them. Those prayers were about to be answered. The desert heat hit Sarah Mitchell like a physical blow the moment she stepped off the transport plane at Forward Operating Base Crimson. 118 degrees Fahrenheit, the kind of heat that made your lungs ache and your skin feel like it was shrinking against your bones. The air shimmered above the tarmac, creating ghostly mirages that danced and disappeared in the distance. Welcome to hell, she thought. But she had been in hell before, in Afghanistan, in Syria, during joint operations she could never discuss. Heat was just another variable to calculate, another factor to account for when the moment came to squeeze a trigger and send a 175 grain bullet downrange at 2,700 feet per second. Marcus Chen waited for her at the edge of the landing zone, his familiar face creased into a grin despite the oppressive temperature. He had arrived 3 days earlier with the advance team, setting up their equipment and coordinating with the intelligence section. Mitchell, glad you made it. Was starting to think you'd come to your senses and stayed home. Sarah shouldered her rifle case and grabbed her duffel. And miss all this luxury? Not a chance. They walked together toward the cluster of prefab buildings that served as the base's operations center. All around them, soldiers moved with purpose, the controlled chaos of a military installation in an active combat zone. Humvees rumbled past. Helicopters thundered overhead. The distant thump of artillery provided a constant bass note to the symphony of war. Dawson's waiting for you in the TOC, Marcus said. Been here since day one. Man doesn't sleep, Sarah. Just sits in that command center studying maps, running scenarios. It's like he's trying to cram 40 years of knowledge into whatever time he has left. Sarah felt her chest tighten at the mention of her mentor's deteriorating condition. How's he looking? Like hell, but don't tell him I said that. His spirit's still strong, even if his body's giving out. They reached the Tactical Operations Center, a reinforced concrete building at the heart of the base. Inside, the temperature dropped to a barely tolerable 90 degrees thanks to industrial air conditioning units that roared like jet engines. Banks of computers lined one wall, maps covered another. In the center of the room, hunched over a large topographical map of the northern sector, stood Colonel William Dawson. He looked up as Sarah entered, and she had to work to keep her expression neutral. Marcus had been right. Dawson looked like hell. The cancer had carved another 10 pounds off his already lean frame. His uniform hung loose on shoulders that had once been powerful enough to carry a wounded soldier 3 miles through jungle. But his eyes, those sharp hunter's eyes, still burned with fierce intelligence. Staff Sergeant Mitchell, reporting for duty, sir. Dawson straightened, a flash of pain crossing his features before he locked it down with pure force of will. Good to have you here, Sarah. Come look at this. She moved to the map, and Marcus joined them. Dawson had marked the map with red pins, each one representing an ambush site where American forces had been hit in the past month. The pattern was unmistakable. The enemy was working systematically, targeting specific patrol routes, exploiting known weaknesses in American defensive positions. Intelligence confirms what we suspected, Dawson said, his finger tracing lines between the red pins. The enemy has established a network of observation posts throughout the sector. They're watching us constantly, reporting our movements, coordinating their attacks with precision we haven't seen before. He tapped a spot on the map where 3 ambush sites clustered close together. This is where we start. I've identified 9 probable OP locations based on sightlines and previous attack patterns. Your job is to eliminate these spotters. Blind them. Make them afraid to stick their heads up. Once we take away their eyes, we take away their advantage. Sarah studied the map, her mind already calculating ranges, approach routes, hide sites. This was the work she had trained for. This was where mathematics and morality intersected, where her skills could be applied to the sacred task of protecting American lives. Rules of engagement, sir? Standard ROE with one modification. If you have positive identification of a spotter actively observing our positions, you are authorized to engage without waiting for hostile action. These people are enemy combatants. They're choosing to participate in attacks on American forces. The moment they pick up those binoculars, they've made their choice. Understood, sir. When do we start? Dawson glanced at Marcus. Chen says you're both ready to go. I say you get some rest, acclimatize for 24 hours, and we launch the first operation tomorrow at dawn. Sir, with respect, I didn't fly 7,000 miles to rest. Give me 4 hours to prep my gear and study the terrain. We can be in position by nightfall. A slight smile played at the corners of Dawson's mouth, the same smile he had given her 4 years ago when she had volunteered for the hardest shots in sniper school. That's my girl, aggressive, confident, just like I taught you. He turned to Marcus. Get her set up, full mission package. I want comms, backup positions, and extraction plans. This is not a suicide run. We're fighting a long war here, and I need both of you alive and operational. Yes, sir, they said in unison. 6 hours later, as the brutal sun finally began its descent toward the western horizon, Sarah and Marcus moved through the outskirts of a small village 3 kilometers from the base. They wore civilian clothes, moved with the unhurried pace of locals going about their business, and carried their weapons in nondescript bags that could have contained anything from tools to groceries. The first observation post was exactly where Dawson had predicted it would be. A 3-story building with a clear sight line to the main road leading into Faux Crimson. Perfect position for someone to watch and report American movements. They set up their hide in an abandoned house 400 meters away, using the upper floor which gave them the angle they needed. Sarah assembled her rifle with practiced efficiency. The M110 came together in her hands like an old friend returning home. She settled into her shooting position, her body conforming to the hard floor, her breathing slowing, her mind entering that quiet space where nothing existed except the target and the shot. Marcus set up beside her with the spotting scope, a more powerful optic that would allow him to read wind conditions and confirm hits. I've got movement, Marcus whispered. 3rd floor window. Male, mid-20s, definitely watching the road with binos. Looks like he's got a radio. Sarah found the target through her scope. The man was young, maybe 23 or 24, with a neatly trimmed beard and the careful movements of someone who had been trained in surveillance techniques. He scanned the road methodically, pausing on each vehicle that passed, likely reporting their descriptions and directions to whoever was coordinating attacks. She felt no anger toward him, no personal animosity. He was a target, a tactical problem to be solved. His death would save American lives. That was the equation. That was the only math that mattered. Range 403 meters, Marcus murmured. Wind 2 miles per hour, left to right. Temp 112 degrees. You're good for center mass. Sarah made minute adjustments to her scope, compensating for the slight wind and the heat distortion rising from the sand between her position and the target. Her finger rested lightly on the trigger, applying that perfect 4 pounds of pressure that would send the round down range. The spotter turned slightly, presenting a better angle. His body was framed perfectly in the window. Sarah's breathing slowed to almost nothing. Her heart rate dropped. The world narrowed to just the crosshairs and the target. She squeezed. The suppressed rifle coughed, a sound that would not carry far in the evening air. 400 meters away, the young man jerked once and collapsed out of sight. Sarah kept her eye to the scope, watching for movement, confirming the kill. Nothing. Just the empty window and the gathering darkness. Hit, Marcus confirmed through his spotting scope. Target down. 1 shot, 1 kill, just like always. Sarah exhaled slowly and began to break down her position. They would not stay here. The first rule of sniping was to shoot and move. Never fire twice from the same location. That night, back at Faux Crimson, Sarah lay in her bunk and stared at the ceiling of her small quarters. She had killed a man today. The first of many, she knew. It should have bothered her more than it did, but all she could think about was the patrol that would roll down that road tomorrow, the soldiers who would pass by that 3rd floor window without someone watching, reporting, coordinating an ambush that could kill them all. She had saved lives today. The killing was just the cost of that salvation. Her phone buzzed with an incoming message. The sat phone system allowed limited communication with home. She opened the message and felt her heart clench. It was a photo from Margaret Dawson. Emma, smiling wide, holding up a picture she had drawn. More stick figures. A woman with a rifle. A man with a shovel, or maybe a rifle, it was hard to tell from a 6-year-old's artwork. And a little girl in the middle with a heart above her head. The message read, Emma wanted you to see her new drawing. She says you're out there being a guardian angel. She's very proud of her mommy. We all are. Stay safe. Margaret. Sarah typed back a quick response. Tell her I love her. Tell her mommy is doing important work and thinking of her every day. She set the phone aside and closed her eyes, but sleep did not come easily. It never did on deployment. Instead, she thought about tomorrow, about the 8 remaining observation posts that needed to be eliminated, about the enemy out there in the darkness, plotting, planning, preparing to kill more Americans. And she thought about the rifle lying disassembled in the case beside her bunk, the tool that would allow her to stop them. Over the next 7 days, Sarah and Marcus worked their way through Dawson's target list with methodical precision. The second spotter went down at 520 meters, caught in the open on a rooftop. The third was harder, hiding behind partial cover, requiring Sarah to wait 4 hours for him to expose himself enough for a clean shot. The fourth and fifth were taken in a single evening, both watching different approaches to a forward operating base where Rangers had been ambushed twice in the past week. By day 6, enemy communications were showing signs of panic. Intercepted radio traffic spoke of an invisible American sniper, a ghost who killed from distances they could not counter. The observation network was collapsing. Militant leaders were having trouble finding replacements willing to man the posts. On the 7th day, Sarah eliminated the 9th and final spotter with a 680-meter shot just after dawn. The man had been careful, moving only in darkness, but he had made the mistake of checking his position one more time and as the sun rose. One mistake was all Sarah needed. That evening, Colonel Dawson called a briefing in the TOC. The mood was celebratory. Patrol reports showed a 70% reduction in ambush attempts. American casualties had dropped to near zero over the past week. For the first time in months, soldiers were completing patrols without being engaged by a prepared enemy. Dawson stood before the assembled officers and senior enlisted, and despite the ravages of his illness, he projected an aura of quiet authority that commanded respect. Gentlemen, ladies, we've achieved our first objective. Staff Sergeant Mitchell and Sergeant Chen have successfully dismantled the enemy's observation network. 9 confirmed kills, 9 spotters who will never report another American position, 9 fewer threats to our soldiers. A round of applause rippled through the room. Sarah felt uncomfortable with the recognition, but accepted it with professional grace. However, Dawson continued, his tone shifting to something harder, we have new intelligence that changes the tactical picture. He nodded to the intelligence officer, a young lieutenant who pulled up a series of photographs on the display screen. This is Zahir al-Masri, known locally as the Reaper, former Republican Guard under Saddam Hussein, highly trained, highly motivated. We believe he's the one who organized and coordinated the attacks that have plagued this sector for the past 3 months. The photos showed a man in his early 40s, lean and hard, with the bearing of someone who had spent a lifetime in military service. Even in still images, he radiated a kind of cold competence that Sarah recognized. This was not some fanatic with more courage than skill. This was a professional. Intel suggests the Reaper is personally taking field command now that we've blinded his network, the lieutenant continued. He's bringing in reinforcements and ramping up operations. We expect increased activity in the coming weeks. Dawson stepped forward again. Which brings me to our next objective. We've located the Reaper's compound. Western edge of the city, heavily fortified but not impenetrable. I'm authorizing a direct action mission. We take him off the board, we cut the head off the snake. Sarah leaned forward, studying the satellite imagery of the compound that appeared on the screen. High walls, guard towers, multiple buildings. It would be a nightmare to assault directly. But she was not planning an assault. Sir, request permission to conduct a reconnaissance of the compound. Identify patterns, vulnerabilities, potential firing positions. Dawson nodded. Granted, you've got 72 hours. If you can find me a shot, we'll take it. If not, we'll coordinate with special operations for a direct action raid. After the briefing, as soldiers filed out discussing the new mission, Sarah found David waiting for her outside the TOC. She had not seen her husband in 3 weeks, not since his Green Beret team had returned from a mission deep in the desert, hunting high-value targets. He pulled her into a quick embrace, mindful of military protocol, but needing the contact nonetheless. Heard you've been busy. 9 kills in 7 days. They're calling you the guardian angel. Sarah felt a strange mix of pride and discomfort at the nickname. Just doing my job. It's more than that, and you know it. Those patrols you covered, those are real soldiers who went home alive because you were watching over them. That matters. They walked together toward the dining facility, stealing a few minutes of normalcy in the middle of the war. David told her about his recent mission, details he could share at least. Sarah told him about Emma's drawings, about Margaret's updates, about the strange disconnect between the violence of her days and the innocent normalcy of home. Dawson's planning something big, David said as they sat with trays of mediocre food that somehow tasted good after a day in the heat. I can see it in his eyes, this thing with the Reaper. It's personal for him. Like he needs to prove something before. He trailed off, but Sarah knew what he meant. Before the cancer won, before time ran out. Dawson was racing against his own mortality, trying to accomplish one more mission, save one more group of soldiers, make one more difference before the end. He's asked me to be part of the security element, David continued. If you find a shot on the Reaper, if we can set up an assassination, my team will be your extraction and backup. Sarah nodded slowly. The thought of David being there, watching her back, gave her comfort and concern in equal measure. Comfort because there was no one she trusted more. Concern because it meant both of them would be in danger at the same time, and Emma could lose both parents in a single mission gone wrong. We'll make it work, she said, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. We always do. For the next 3 days, Sarah and Marcus conducted surveillance on the Reaper's compound. They rotated through different observation positions, mapping guard schedules, studying movement patterns, looking for the one vulnerability that would allow Sarah to do what she did best. The compound was a fortress. The Reaper clearly understood the threat posed by American snipers. He moved only at night, always with bodyguards, never exposing himself for more than a few seconds at a time. But everyone, no matter how careful, developed routines. And routines created opportunities. On the 3rd evening of surveillance, Sarah spotted it. Just before sunset, the Reaper had a habit of climbing to the roof of his compound's main building. He would stand there for 5 to 10 minutes, surveying his territory like some warlord of old. Sometimes alone, sometimes with a single guard. It was a tiny window, but it was enough. Sarah reported her findings to Dawson, and they spent the next 4 hours planning the operation in meticulous detail. The shot would be 912 meters, the longest Sarah had ever attempted in combat. The variables were daunting: wind conditions, heat distortion, the slight downward angle from her firing position to the target, the fact that the Reaper would only be exposed for a few minutes at most. Can you make the shot? Dawson asked, his eyes searching hers for any hint of doubt. Sarah thought about it with absolute honesty. 912 meters was at the edge of her rifle's effective range. The M110 was designed for targets out to 800 meters. Beyond that, every factor was magnified. A slight miscalculation in wind speed could mean a miss by several feet. Heat distortion could throw off her aim. The target might move at the wrong moment. But she had trained for this. She had made longer shots on the range at Fort Benning. She understood the physics, the mathematics, the precise sequence of calculations required to send a bullet on a flight path that would intersect with a human target almost a kilometer away. Yes, sir, I can make the shot. Dawson smiled. That fierce predatory smile of a hunter who had just confirmed his prey was vulnerable. Then let's go hunting. They moved into position the next afternoon, Sarah, Marcus, in a 4-man security element led by David. The firing position was a partially collapsed building 912 meters from the Reaper's compound, far enough that Sarah's suppressed rifle would be nearly impossible to locate even if someone heard the shot. They set up in what remained of the top floor, using rubble and broken furniture to create a hide that would conceal them from any casual observer. Sarah assembled her rifle with extra care, checking every component twice, ensuring everything was perfect. David and his team established security positions on the lower floors and at key access points. If they were discovered, if the enemy tried to assault their position, the Green Berets would buy Sarah the time she needed to complete the mission. Marcus set up beside Sarah with his spotting scope, and his range-finding equipment. They had done this dance 1,000 times in training. Now it was real. Now the target would not be a silhouette on a range, but a living human being who would die if Sarah's calculations were correct. The sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that reminded Sarah painfully of Texas sunsets. She pushed thoughts of home away. There was only the mission now, only the shot. Range confirmed at 912 meters, Marcus whispered. Wind is 4 miles per hour quartering from the left. Temperature 71 degrees, humidity 48%. Sarah ran the calculations in her head, factoring in bullet drop, wind drift, the Coriolis effect at this distance, the slight downward angle. At 912 meters, her bullet would drop almost 13 feet and drift 8 inches. The shot would take just over 1.5 seconds, time for the Reaper to move if he sensed danger. She would only get one chance. Movement on the roof, Marcus said suddenly. I've got 3 individuals, 2 guards, and confirm, that's our target. The Reaper is on the roof. Sarah found him through her scope. Zohar al-Masri stood with his back partially to her, speaking with one of his bodyguards. He wore traditional robes that shifted slightly in the evening breeze, making the shot harder. Fabric could cause a bullet to deflect if it caught wrong. She needed him still. She needed him facing her direction. She needed those 3 seconds where everything aligned. Wind's picking up, Marcus murmured. 5 miles per hour now. Adjust point 6 mils left. Sarah made the adjustment, her hands steady despite the adrenaline beginning to course through her system. The Reaper turned, scanning the horizon as if he could sense the danger stalking him from nearly a kilometer away. He paused, looking almost directly towards Sarah's position. For a moment, she could see his face clearly through her scope. A hard face. A warrior's face. A man who had killed many and would kill many more if given the chance. His robe settled as the wind died for just a moment. 3 seconds of stillness. 3 seconds where wind and angle and distance all aligned in Sarah's favor. She took a breath, let half of it out, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle recoiled against her shoulder with familiar authority. The suppressor reduced the sound to a sharp crack that would barely carry 100 meters. Through her scope, Sarah watched the bullet's flight as if she could see the round cutting through the air. 912 meters, 1.5 seconds. The round struck the Reaper high in the chest, hitting the ceramic plate of body armor he wore beneath his robes. The kinetic impact was massive, like being hit by a sledgehammer at supersonic speed. The force spun him violently and threw him backward. He disappeared from view behind the rooftop wall, knocked completely off his feet by the tremendous energy transfer. His bodyguard reacted instantly, dropping to cover, weapon drawn, scanning for threats. But the shot had come from so far away that he might as well have been looking for a ghost. The guard rushed to where the Reaper had fallen, shouting into his radio, calling for help. Sarah kept her eye to the scope, watching for movement, trying to confirm the kill. But the Reaper had fallen behind the wall, out of sight. She could not see if he was dead, wounded, or somehow still functional. Hit confirmed, Marcus said through his spotting scope. Impact on target. He went down hard. Can't confirm kill from this angle, but that was a solid hit. Sarah felt a twist of frustration. At 912 meters with all the variables she had calculated for, she had expected a clean kill. But body armor changed everything. The round had hit exactly where she aimed, but instead of penetrating flesh, it had struck hardened ceramic designed to stop rifle rounds. Pack it up, Sarah said quietly. We're done here. They broke down their equipment with practiced speed and moved out of the building in tactical formation. David's team provided security as they extracted through the darkening streets, moving like shadows through a city that would wake tomorrow to find their warlord either dead or badly wounded. Back at Fob Crimson, the mood was cautiously optimistic. Sarah reported the hit, explained the body armor complication, and acknowledged that they could not confirm whether the Reaper had been killed or merely injured. Colonel Dawson met them at the TOC, and his expression was thoughtful rather than disappointed. 912 meters, a hit on target even if we can't confirm the kill. That's exceptional work, Sarah. The intelligence boys will be monitoring communications. If the Reaper is dead, we'll know soon enough. If he's wounded, he'll be out of action for weeks at minimum. Either way, you've disrupted their command structure. That night, there was a small gathering in the senior enlisted dining area. Nothing official, nothing too elaborate, but soldiers who understood what Sarah had accomplished wanted to acknowledge it. David was there, pride radiating from every pore. Marcus regaled anyone who would listen with the technical details of the shot. Sarah accepted the congratulations with quiet grace, but inside, she felt conflicted. She had made a near-impossible shot, struck the target at a range that challenged the limits of her weapon system. But the gnawing uncertainty about whether the Reaper had survived bothered her more than she wanted to admit. David found her later, sitting alone outside her quarters, looking up at stars that were the same stars that shone over Texas, over Emma, over the life that waited for her when this was all over. "You okay?" he asked, sitting beside her. "I don't know if I got him. 912 meters, perfect conditions. I did everything right, but the body armor." David turned to face her, his expression serious. "Sarah, you made a shot that 99% of snipers couldn't even attempt. You hit a man-sized target at almost a kilometer. Whether he's dead or just badly wounded, you've taken him off the battlefield. That's a win." She nodded slowly, wanting to believe it. "Dawson's proud of you. I'm proud of you. Hell, the whole base is talking about it. The Guardian Angel strikes at 912 meters. That's the story they're telling." Before Sarah could respond, her phone buzzed. A message from Margaret Dawson. Another photo. Emma in her pajamas, holding a stuffed animal, smiling at the camera. The message read, "Bedtime prayers tonight included asking God to protect Mommy the Guardian Angel and help her save soldiers. You're doing important work, Sarah. We're all so proud." Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes. Emma was proud. Her daughter looked up to her, saw her as some kind of superhero protecting people. It should have felt good. Instead, it felt like a weight, a responsibility that grew heavier with every life she took and every life she saved. She typed back, "Tell her I love her more than anything. Tell her Mommy is being careful and thinking of her every day." The next 2 weeks passed in relative calm. Attacks dropped 70% across the northern sector. American casualties fell to near zero. Patrols completed their missions without contact. For the first time in months, soldiers could walk the streets without expecting an ambush at every corner. Intelligence reports confirmed that the Reaper had indeed survived Sarah's shot, but he had been badly injured. Broken ribs, massive bruising, possibly internal injuries from the kinetic impact. He was out of action, recovering somewhere outside the city, no longer able to personally coordinate operations. But the intelligence also brought troubling news. The Reaper had a brother, Hassan al-Masri, reportedly even more ruthless than Zahir. And Hassan had just arrived in the sector with reinforcements from Syria, bringing with him a Russian mercenary advisor named Viktor Volkov. Colonel Dawson called Sarah to his office 3 days before what would become the most important mission of her deployment. When she arrived, she found him holding an old rifle, a weapon that looked like it had seen decades of service. "This is my personal rifle," Dawson said, running his hand along the worn stock with obvious affection. "Had it rebuilt twice over the years. Made some of the most important shots of my career with this weapon." He held it out to Sarah. "I want you to have it, not as a replacement for your M110, but as a symbol, a reminder that you're carrying forward a tradition, that you're the next generation of Guardian Angels." Sarah took the rifle with reverence, feeling the weight of history in her hands. "Sir, I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep doing what you're doing. Say you'll keep protecting our soldiers. Say you'll pass this along someday to the next shooter who earns it." "I promise, sir, I will." Dawson nodded, satisfied. Then his expression shifted to something more serious. "There's something else. Hassan al-Masri just became our primary target. And this Russian mercenary, Viktor Volkov, he's not here by accident. Intel suggests he's a professional counter-sniper. Someone with the skills to hunt our shooters." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. A professional sniper hunting her, specifically. The hunter becoming the hunted. "What do we know about this Russian?" Dawson pulled up a file on his computer and turned the monitor towards Sarah. The face that stared back at her was hard and weathered. A man in his 50s with eyes that had seen too much death. Viktor Volkov, former Spetsnaz, confirmed kills in Chechnya, Georgia, Syria. He's been offered a substantial bounty to eliminate the American sniper who's been causing so much trouble. That would be you. "So he's hunting me?" "Yes, which means everything changes. You're no longer just the hunter, Sarah. You're also the prey." That night, Sarah lay in her bunk and thought about Viktor Volkov. Somewhere out there in the darkness, a professional killer was preparing to hunt her. Someone with decades of experience. Someone who understood sniping at the highest levels. Someone who would not make the mistakes that had gotten the Reaper wounded. She thought about Emma, about the promise she had made to come home. She thought about David, sleeping in quarters across the base, unaware that his wife had just been marked for death by one of the most dangerous snipers in the world. And she thought about the rifle Dawson had given her, the weapon that had protected American soldiers for decades, now passed to her hands. She would not fail. She would not let Volkov win. She would not leave Emma without a mother. She was the guardian angel, and guardian angels did not lose. 2 days later, Sarah was providing overwatch for a routine ranger patrol when her radio crackled with urgent traffic. All stations, this is Overlord. We have reports of hostile activity in Sector 7. Ranger element is requesting immediate fire support. Sarah's heart rate spiked. Sector 7 was where David's team was operating. She grabbed her radio. Overlord, this is Guardian Angel. I can provide overwatch. What's the situation? There was a pause, then a different voice came on the line. Tense, strained, afraid. Guardian Angel, this is Ranger 3-2 actual. We're taking effective fire from multiple positions. We've got casualties. We're pinned down. We need help now. Sarah recognized the voice. Major Jack Morrison, a good officer who had served 3 tours and never lost a man. Until today. Ranger 3-2, this is Guardian Angel. I'm moving to your position. Hold tight. Help is coming. She looked at Marcus, who was already packing up their equipment. How far to Sector 7? 12 minutes if we push it. Then we push it. Rangers are dying and we're their only hope. They moved through the city at a dead run, carrying 70 pounds of gear each, their bodies screaming in protest, but their minds locked on the mission. Somewhere ahead, American soldiers were fighting for their lives. Somewhere ahead, the guardian angel was needed. And somewhere in the darkness, Viktor Volkov was watching, waiting, preparing to spring his trap. Because this was not a random engagement. This was not luck or coincidence. This was a carefully orchestrated ambush designed to draw out the one American sniper who had become a legend, the guardian angel who never missed. Viktor Volkov had set the bait, and Sarah Mitchell was running straight into his kill zone. But she did not know that yet. All she knew was that Rangers needed her, that American soldiers were dying, that somewhere in Sector 7, men were whispering desperate prayers for a miracle. And Sarah Mitchell was in the business of delivering miracles. The only question was whether she would survive long enough to deliver this one. Sarah Mitchell had run through cities under fire before. She had moved through hostile territory in Afghanistan, Syria, and half a dozen classified locations that would never appear in any official report. But this was different. This time she could hear the desperation in Jack Morrison's voice over the radio. This time American soldiers were dying while she ran through narrow streets with 70 pounds of gear strapped to her back. Marcus Chen matched her pace stride for stride, both of them pushing their bodies beyond what training said was sustainable. The mid-afternoon sun beat down with brutal intensity, turning the city into an oven that sucked moisture from their bodies faster than they could replace it. Sarah's lungs burned. Her legs screamed in protest. She ignored both. Rangers were dying. Nothing else mattered. They cleared the last major intersection, and Sarah spotted the rooftop she needed. A 4-story building with clear sight lines over Sector 7. Getting to the roof would require climbing an external fire escape that looked like it had not been maintained since the first Gulf War, but it was the only position that would give her the angle she needed. "That's our spot," she gasped, pointing. Marcus nodded, too winded to speak. They hit the fire escape at a dead run. The metal groaned under their weight, rust flaking off in orange clouds, but it held. Sarah took the stairs 3 at a time, her rifle case banging against her back. Marcus right behind her with the spotting scope and ammunition. 4 floors. 90 seconds of climbing that felt like an eternity. Every second that passed was another second that Morrison's Rangers were taking fire, bleeding out, dying in a kill zone designed specifically to slaughter them. Sarah burst onto the rooftop and immediately moved to the northern edge. Below and roughly 600 meters distant, she could see Sector 7, and what she saw made her blood run cold. It was a perfect ambush, a textbook execution of overlapping fields of fire and coordinated violence. The Rangers had been funneled down a narrow street by small arms fire until they clustered in a choke point covered by elevated positions on 3 sides. Every direction offered a kill angle. Every piece of cover was illusory, providing concealment but not protection from the plunging fire raining down from above. Sarah could see bodies, at least 3 Rangers down, maybe more. The survivors had taken what cover they could behind a burned-out vehicle and scattered rubble, but they were pinned, trapped, dying. Machine gun fire raked their positions from a third-story window. An RPG team moved into position on a rooftop, preparing to finish the job. Enemy fighters with AK-47s fired methodically, conserving ammunition, taking their time because they knew the Americans had nowhere to go. Jesus, Marcus breathed beside her as he set up the spotting scope. There's got to be 40 hostiles, maybe more. Sarah was already assembling her rifle, her hands moving with the automatic precision of 10,000 repetitions. Stock, upper receiver, bolt carrier group, charging handle, magazine, chamber check. The M110 came together in her hands like an old friend, familiar and deadly. She dropped prone behind a low wall that would provide concealment and began ranging targets. Her mind shifted into that cold, analytical space where emotion had no place, where everything became mathematics and physics and the sacred geometry of bullet trajectories. Range to nearest hostile, 580 meters, Marcus called out softly. 13 miles per hour, quartering right. Temp 114 degrees. Sarah found the machine gunner through her scope, a young man, maybe 25, feeding a belt of ammunition into a PKM. He fired in controlled bursts, professional and disciplined. His rounds were shredding the Rangers' cover, keeping them pinned, preventing any movement. She put her crosshairs on his chest and began her calculations. 580 meters, slight wind, extreme heat creating distortion, downward angle from her position to his. Her breathing slowed, her heart rate dropped. The world narrowed to just the reticle and the target. Then she saw him, Viktor Volkov, 800 meters away, on a rooftop overlooking the entire kill zone from a different angle. He was scanning through his own scope, hunting, searching, looking for her. Sarah's mind raced through the tactical situation in microseconds. Volkov was the greater threat to her personally. If she engaged the militants below, she would expose her position. Volkov would see her muzzle flash, calculate her location, and return fire. At 800 meters, with his Dragunov rifle and decades of experience, he would not miss many shots. The smart play was to kill Volkov first, eliminate the counter-sniper threat, secure her own safety, then engage the militants. But that would take time. Time to range him properly. Time to account for the greater distance and more complex wind conditions. Time to set up the perfect shot. And Jack Morrison's Rangers did not have time. Through her scope, Sarah could see one of the wounded Americans, a young soldier, maybe 19 years old, lying in the open with his legs bent at angles that legs should never bend. Another Ranger was trying to crawl toward him, trying to drag him to cover, but machine gun fire forced him back. Sarah thought about Emma, about the promise she had made to come home, about the 6-year-old girl who drew pictures of her mommy, the guardian angel. If Sarah engaged now, Volkov would almost certainly hit her. Maybe not a kill shot, but enough to wound her, take her out of the fight, maybe worse. But if she did not engage now, those Rangers would die. All of them, slaughtered in a kill zone while she played it safe on a rooftop 600 meters away. The choice was not really a choice at all. Sarah shifted her aim back to the machine gunner and keyed her radio. Ranger 3-2, this is Guardian Angel. I have eyes on your position. Going loud in 5 seconds. When I engage, you move your casualties, understood? Morrison's voice came back, tight with pain and hope and desperate gratitude. Copy, Guardian Angel. We're ready. Sarah took one more breath, said a quick prayer that she would see Emma again, and squeezed the trigger. The suppressed rifle coughed. 580 meters away, the PKM gunner jerked backward as the round punched through his chest. He dropped across his weapon, and the machine gun fell silent. Sarah was already transitioning to her next target, an RPG gunner on a rooftop preparing to fire at the Ranger's position. She led him slightly, accounting for his movement, and fired. He tumbled forward, the RPG clattering from his hands unfired. From 800 meters away, Viktor Volkov saw the shots, saw the effects, calculated the trajectory back to its source, and opened fire on Sarah's position. The first round hit the wall 3 feet to her left, spraying concrete fragments. The second round was closer, maybe 18 inches. Volkov was walking his fire toward her, bracketing her position with the methodical precision of a master craftsman. Sarah, we need to move, Marcus shouted. He's got us ranged. Not yet, Sarah said, her voice eerily calm. She found another target, a fighter with an AK-47 providing covering fire. Center mass, squeeze. He dropped. Volkov's third round hit 6 inches above Sarah's head, close enough that she felt the supersonic crack of the bullet passing. Marcus flinched. Sarah did not. She swung her rifle toward a cluster of 3 militants coordinating their assault. They were using hand signals, professional and organized. Leaders, high-value targets. She took the first one with the headshot through a gap in the concrete he thought provided cover. The second tried to move to a better position. Sarah caught him mid-stride. The third froze, confused and frightened. That hesitation was fatal. Volkov's next round hit the spotting scope Marcus was using, shattering the optic and sending glass fragments into his face. Marcus recoiled with a cry of pain, blood streaming from a dozen small cuts. "I'm okay," he gasped. "Keep shooting. I can still range for you." Sarah felt something fierce and protective surge through her. Marcus was her partner, her friend, her brother in arms. Volkov had just hurt him. That made this personal. But she pushed the emotion aside. Emotion got you killed. Cold mathematics kept you alive and let you complete the mission. Below, Morrison's Rangers were moving, dragging wounded toward better cover, laying down suppressive fire of their own. Sarah covered them, engaging any threat that exposed itself. A sniper trying to get an angle on the moving Rangers. 2 fighters rushing forward with grenades. A squad attempting to flank from the east. Each shot was deliberate, each shot was precise. Each shot meant another enemy who would never threaten American soldiers again. The tempo increased. Sarah fell into a rhythm, a deadly cadence of aim, breathe, squeeze, confirm, transition. 3 seconds per shot, sometimes 4 if the target was particularly difficult. Never more than 5. Her rifle grew hot in her hands. Brass casings piled up around her position, glinting in the brutal sunlight. The chemical smell of spent powder filled the air, and still she fired. Volkov matched her shot for shot, his rounds impacting closer and closer to her position. He was good, better than good. He was everything the intelligence report said he was. A master sniper with 40 years of experience and a kill count that probably exceeded Sarah's by a factor of 10. But Sarah had something Volkov did not have. She had a reason beyond money or ideology. She was not fighting for a paycheck or because some militant leader had hired her. She was fighting because 18 American soldiers needed her, because they had wives and children and parents who were praying for their safe return, because guardian angels did not abandon the people they were sworn to protect. A militant broke cover, trying to sprint to a better firing position. Sarah led him perfectly, accounting for his speed and direction. He made it 3 steps before her round dropped him. Another RPG team appeared, this one with a clear angle on the Rangers. Sarah took the gunner first, then the assistant who tried to grab the launcher. Both down in 4 seconds. She heard Morrison over the radio, his voice tight but controlled. "Guardian Angel, you are saving our lives. We've got 3 wounded stable. Moving to exfil point." "Copy," Sarah replied, never taking her eye from the scope. "Keep moving. I've got you covered." Volkov's next round came so close that Sarah felt the heat of it passing inches from her face. The Russian was zeroing in, getting tighter, preparing for the kill shot that would end the American sniper who had become such a problem. Sarah knew she should move. Every doctrine, every training evolution, every lesson Colonel Dawson had ever taught her said that staying in one position under accurate counter-sniper fire was suicide. But moving meant the Rangers would lose their cover. Moving meant some of those wounded soldiers would die before reaching the extraction point. Moving meant abandoning her post. So she stayed, and she kept firing. An enemy commander tried to rally his fighters, shouting orders and pointing toward the Rangers' escape route. Sarah silenced him with a round that entered just below his jaw and removed the top of his skull. 2 militants with AK-47s leaned around a corner, firing on full automatic at the retreating Americans. Sarah took them both, 2 shots in 3 seconds, and they collapsed in a tangle of limbs. She was keeping count unconsciously, the way a quarterback counts down the play clock or a pilot monitors fuel consumption. Some part of her brain was tracking every shot, every kill, every enemy removed from the battlefield. 27 down. How many left? She did not know. She just kept engaging targets as they appeared. A fighter tried to reposition the PKM that Sarah had silenced minutes earlier. She caught him as he bent over the weapon, and he fell across it just as his predecessor had. Volkov fired again. This round hit the concrete directly in front of Sarah's rifle, so close that fragments struck her face, drawing blood. She barely noticed. There were still threats on the battlefield, still Rangers in danger, still work to be done. Marcus was calling out ranges and wind conditions through a face covered in blood, his voice steady despite the pain. He had switched to using his naked eye and a handheld rangefinder after Volkov destroyed his spotting scope. It was less precise, but it was enough. 200 meters, you're 10 o'clock. 3 targets moving toward ranger position. Sarah found them. Young men with AK-47s and the burning certainty of the faithful. They moved with purpose, trying to cut off the ranger's escape. She took all 3 before they made it 10 meters. The last one was still turning toward her when the bullet hit. 32 down. An RPG streaked across the battlefield, trailing smoke, and impacted near Morrison's position. The explosion was massive, throwing up debris and dust. Sarah's heart clenched. Had it hit? Were there casualties? Morrison's voice came over the radio, shaken but alive. "Close one, Angel. Keep them off us. We're almost out." Sarah found the RPG gunner reloading on a distant rooftop. 820 meters. Extreme range for the M110. She calculated the shot in 2 seconds, adjusted for the distance and the elevation difference, and fired. The gunner pitched backward, the reloaded RPG falling from nerveless fingers. 33 down. Movement to her right. A fighter trying to get an angle on Sarah's position with a Dragunov rifle. Not Volkov. Someone else. Another sniper. Sarah transitioned faster than conscious thought, found him in her scope, and fired before he could complete his aim. He slumped forward across the windowsill where he had been positioned. 34 down. The tempo was insane now. Sarah was firing as fast as she could acquire targets, trusting her training, trusting her instincts, trusting the 10,000 hours she had spent on ranges perfecting this exact skill set. 2 militants tried to rush the ranger's rear. Sarah dropped them both. 36 down. A final fighter, the last one Sarah could see actively threatening Morrison's team, leaned out from behind cover to throw a grenade. Sarah put a round through his shoulder, spinning him around. The grenade fell at his feet. The explosion removed him from the count. 37 down. Sarah kept her eye to the scope, scanning for more targets, but the battlefield had gone eerily quiet. The surviving militants were either dead, wounded, or fleeing. The coordinated assault had broken against the rock of one American sniper who refused to yield her position. Ranger 3-2, this is a Guardian Angel. I count 0 active threats in your sector. You're clear to exfil. Morrison's response was hoarse with emotion. Guardian Angel, I don't know how you did what you just did, but you saved 18 lives today. Every man here owes you a debt we can never repay. Sarah wanted to respond, to say something profound or meaningful, but before she could key her radio, she heard Marcus shout a warning. Sarah, Volkov's moving. He's repositioning for a better angle. She swung her rifle toward where Volkov had been, but the Russian was already gone, abandoning his position now that the main assault had failed. Sarah caught a glimpse of him disappearing down a stairwell 800 meters away. For a moment, she considered taking the shot, but it would have been through glass, at a moving target, at extreme range. The probability of a clean kill was maybe 30%. The probability of wounding him and having him escape anyway was much higher. And Sarah was not in the business of wounding. She either killed clean or she did not shoot. She lowered her rifle and let Volkov go. Pack it up, she told Marcus. We need to move before someone comes looking for the sniper who just killed 40 people. 37, Marcus corrected, pressing a cloth to his bleeding face. You killed 37. I counted every one. Sarah stared at him. 37 confirmed kills in roughly 4 minutes. It was impossible. It was insane. It was exactly what she had just done. They broke down their equipment with practice speed despite Marcus's injuries and Sarah's shaking hands. The adrenaline was wearing off now, and her body was beginning to realize what she had just put it through. Her arms felt like jelly. Her legs trembled. Her mouth was dry as sand. But they had to move. Staying was death. They made it to the ground floor and slipped out a back entrance just as they heard voices approaching from the street. Angry voices, frightened voices, people looking for the ghost who had slaughtered an army. Sarah and Marcus moved through the city like shadows, taking back routes and alleyways, never staying in one place long enough to be identified. They made it back to Phobie Crimson just as the sun was setting, painting the sky the color of blood and fire. The base was in controlled chaos. Word had already spread about what happened in Sector 7. Morrison's Rangers had made it back with all 18 men alive, 3 seriously wounded but stable, the rest shaken but intact. Sarah headed straight for the aid station to get Marcus treated. A medic took one look at his face and started cleaning the glass fragments from his skin with professional efficiency. "You're lucky," the medic said. "Quarter-inch higher and you'd have lost an eye." "I'm lucky to be alive," Marcus replied, glancing at Sarah. "We both are." Before Sarah could respond, the aid station door burst open and Colonel Dawson strode in, moving with an energy that seemed impossible given his condition. His face was flushed, his eyes bright with something between pride and disbelief. "Is it true?" he demanded. "Morrison's report says you killed 37 hostiles in 4 minutes. 37 confirmed kills, while under fire from a counter sniper. Is that accurate?" Sarah nodded slowly. "Yes, sir, 37 confirmed." Dawson stared at her for a long moment. Then he did something Sarah had never seen him do before. He hugged her. A quick, fierce embrace that spoke volumes about the bond between mentor and student, between two warriors who understood the weight of what had just happened. "That's the finest piece of shooting I've heard of in 40 years, Dawson said, his voice thick with emotion. "You just wrote yourself into the history books, Sarah. 37 kills, 18 lives saved, against impossible odds while a professional counter-sniper was actively hunting you." He stepped back, composing himself. "Silver Star, minimum. I'm putting you in for the Medal of Honor if I have to fight every general between here and the Pentagon." "Sir, I was just doing my job." "The hell you were. You were being the guardian angel. You were being everything I trained you to be, and more. You were being a hero, Sarah Mitchell, whether you want to accept that or not." Before Sarah could formulate a response, her phone buzzed. A sat phone call. She glanced at the screen and felt her heart lurch. Margaret Dawson, calling from Texas. It was 0900 hours local time. Early morning, not a normal time for a call unless something was wrong. Sarah excused herself and stepped outside the aid station to take the call. "Margaret, is everything okay? Is Emma—" "Emma's fine," Margaret's voice came through, but Sarah could hear the strain in it. "But she needs to talk to you right now. She's been crying for 3 hours, Sarah. She had a nightmare about you. She's terrified. She needs to hear your voice." Guilt hit Sarah like a physical blow. She had been so focused on the mission, on the Rangers, on the 37 shots that she had not thought about how her daughter might be processing all of this. What nightmares a 6-year-old might have about a mother who went to war. "Put her on." There was rustling, then Emma's voice, small and frightened and heartbreaking. "Mommy? I'm here, baby. I'm okay. I'm safe. I had a bad dream. You were hurt. You were gone. Grandma Margaret said you're okay, but I needed to hear you say it." Sarah felt tears burning at the corners of her eyes. She had just killed 37 men. She had faced down a professional assassin. She had saved 18 American soldiers from certain death. And now she was undone by the fear in her daughter's voice. "I'm okay, Emma. I promise. I'm not hurt. I'm coming home to you." "When? When are you coming home?" Sarah thought about the deployment timeline. 11 months left. Almost a full year before she would see Emma's face in person rather than through a screen. "Not for a while yet, sweetheart. But I will come home. That's a promise." Emma was quiet for a moment, then she said something that broke Sarah's heart into 1,000 pieces. "Grandma Margaret told me you're a hero, that you save people. But I don't want you to be a hero, Mommy. I just want you to be my mommy. I want you to come home and read me stories and tuck me in and be here." Sarah pressed her hand over her mouth, trying to hold back the sob that wanted to escape. She had to be strong. Emma needed her to be strong. "I know, baby, I know, and I will be. I'll be your mommy again, just as soon as I can. But right now, some soldiers need me to watch over them. Some people need the guardian angel. Can you be brave for me? Can you be strong while Mommy finishes her important work?" "I'll try," Emma whispered, "but I miss you so much it hurts." "I miss you too, sweetheart. More than you could ever know. I love you to the moon and back." "I love you to the moon and back, and all around the stars," Emma replied, their bedtime ritual echoing across 7,000 miles. They talked for a few more minutes, Sarah doing her best to comfort and reassure, until Emma finally calmed enough to go back to bed. When Sarah hung up, she stood in the gathering darkness outside the aid station and finally let the tears fall. She had saved 18 men today. She had performed a feat of marksmanship that would be studied in military academies for decades. She had become a legend. But she could not save her daughter from the fear and loneliness of having a mother at war. She could not comfort Emma when nightmares came. She could not be the one to tuck her in at night or read bedtime stories or just be present in the 1,000 small ways that mothers were supposed to be present. The cost of being the guardian angel was becoming clear. Every life she saved extracted a price from her family, from her daughter, from the normal life she had promised Emma they would have. Sarah wiped her eyes and tried to pull herself together. She was a soldier. She was a professional. She had a job to do. But for the first time since deploying, she wondered if the job was worth what it was costing. She went back inside and found David waiting for her. He was still in his flight suit, having just landed from a mission. When he saw her face, he knew immediately that something was wrong. "Emma?" he asked quietly. Sarah nodded, unable to speak. David pulled her close, and she let herself lean on his strength for just a moment. Let herself be vulnerable with the one person who understood the impossible balance they were trying to maintain. "She'll be okay," David whispered. "Margaret's taking good care of her, and we'll be home soon enough. This deployment won't last forever." 11 more months, Sarah said against his chest. 11 months of Emma going to bed every night wondering if her parents are coming home. 11 months of nightmares and fear, and growing up without us. 11 months of service to something larger than ourselves, David countered gently. 11 months of protecting people who can't protect themselves. That matters, Sarah. What you did today matters. Those 18 Rangers are going home to their families because of you. That's worth something. Sarah knew he was right. Intellectually, she knew that the math worked out, that saving 18 families from grief was worth one family's temporary sacrifice. But tell that to a 6-year-old having nightmares about her mommy dying in a war zone. The next morning, Sarah was summoned to a briefing that would change everything she thought she knew about her mission. Colonel Dawson was there, along with several intelligence officers and a man in civilian clothes who introduced himself only as Wilson from the State Department. The moment Sarah saw him, she knew this was not going to be a normal briefing. "Staff Sergeant Mitchell," Wilson began without preamble, "what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels. It does not leave this room, understood?" "Yes, sir." Wilson pulled up a file on the screen. Viktor Volkov's face appeared, along with pages of documentation. "Viktor Volkov is not working for Hassan al-Masri or any militant group. He's a contracted asset." Sarah felt her stomach drop. "Contracted by who?" "Us. Well, a black budget division of the CIA. Volkov was brought in 3 months ago under a program designed to test American sniper capabilities in combat conditions. The idea was to have a highly skilled operator provide realistic counter-sniper training by hunting our shooters in controlled scenarios." Sarah could not believe what she was hearing. "You're telling me an American agency hired a Russian mercenary to hunt and kill American snipers?" "Not kill, train. The rules of engagement were specific. Volkov was supposed to identify our snipers, shadow them, provide near misses to test their reactions, but never actually fire for effect." "Then why," Sarah said slowly, her voice dangerously calm, "was he shooting at me yesterday? Why did he destroy Marcus's scope? Why did he come within inches of killing me?" Wilson had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Because Volkov went rogue. Somewhere along the way, he decided the money was better working for the militants than working for us. He's using CIA resources and intelligence to actively hunt American snipers. You specifically, after you killed the Reaper." Sarah felt rage building in her chest, hot and righteous and barely controlled. "So you're telling me that my own government brought in the man who's trying to kill me? That American tax dollars paid to train the enemy I'm fighting?" Dawson spoke up, his voice hard as granite. "That's exactly what happened. And now they want Sarah to clean up their mess. They want her to eliminate Volkov before this becomes a political scandal." Wilson nodded. "We need this handled quietly. If it comes out that the CIA hired a Russian mercenary who then started killing Americans, the fallout would be catastrophic. You're authorized to engage Volkov with extreme prejudice, whatever it takes. Just make it look like normal combat operations." Sarah stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "With respect, sir, you can take your authorization and shove it. I'm not an assassin for the CIA's Black Ops cleanup crew. I'm a sniper. I protect American soldiers. If Volkov gets in my way while I'm doing that job, I'll kill him. But I'm not hunting him to cover up some bureaucrat's mistake." She turned to leave, but Dawson's voice stopped her. "Sarah, wait." She turned back, and Dawson's expression was conflicted, torn between his respect for her principles and the political realities of military service. "This comes from the top, orders directly from CENTCOM. You don't have the luxury of refusing. Then court-martial me, but I'm not doing this." Sarah walked out of the briefing room, leaving stunned silence in her wake. She made it halfway across the base before David caught up with her. Sarah, you can't just walk away from a direct order. Watch me. They'll relieve you, send you home. Maybe worse. Sarah stopped and turned to face him. Good. Then I'll get to see Emma. I'll get to be the mother she needs instead of the guardian angel everyone else wants me to be. David studied her face, seeing the conflict, the guilt, the exhaustion of someone who had been carrying too much weight for too long. You don't mean that. Sarah wanted to argue, but she could not. Because he was right. Despite everything, despite the cost and the fear and the nightmares Emma was having, Sarah was not ready to leave. Not yet. Not while there were still soldiers who needed protecting. I hate this, she whispered. I hate what this job is doing to my family. I hate that Emma's suffering because I'm over here killing people. I hate that the government is so incompetent they hired the man who's trying to kill me. I hate all of it. I know, David said gently, but you're still going to finish the mission because that's who you are. That's who Colonel Dawson trained you to be. Sarah closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, some of the fire had returned. If I'm going to do this, I'm doing it my way, not as some CIA cleanup operation. I'll protect our soldiers. I'll eliminate threats. And if Volkov's one of those threats, then yes, I'll take him down, but on my terms, following my code, not theirs. David nodded. I wouldn't expect anything less. That evening, Sarah sat in her quarters cleaning her rifle and thinking about the next phase of the mission. Volkov was out there somewhere, hunting her as she hunted him. Hassan al-Masri was rebuilding his forces, preparing for another major offensive. And somewhere in Texas, Emma Mitchell was going to bed with nightmares about her mother never coming home. The weight of it all felt crushing. But Sarah had carried crushing weight before. She would carry it again. Because that was the price of being the guardian angel. You carried the weight so others did not have to. You stood watch so others could sleep. You became the nightmare that protected people from their nightmares. Sarah thought about the 37 shots she had fired yesterday. 37 lives ended. 37 families who would grieve, but also 18 lives saved. 18 families who would welcome their soldiers home. The mathematics of war were brutal and binary. Kill or be killed. Protect or allow death. There was no middle ground, no gentle compromise. Sarah had chosen her side long ago. She would protect. She would save. And if the cost of that salvation was measured in brass casings and confirmed kills and nightmares for a little girl in Texas, then that was a cost she would pay. Because the alternative was unthinkable. The alternative was Rangers dying in kill zones while guardian angels played it safe. And Sarah Mitchell had not come 7,000 miles to play it safe. She had come to be the miracle that desperate men prayed for when bullets flew and hope ran thin. And tomorrow, she would do it again. The intelligence reports came in 3 days after the Sector 7 massacre, and they painted a picture that made every senior officer at FOB Crimson sit up and take notice. Hassan al-Masri was not retreating. He was not licking his wounds. He was preparing for something massive. Colonel William Dawson stood in the Tactical Operations Center, studying satellite imagery with the intensity of a man who knew he was looking at his final battle. The cancer had progressed to the point where standing for more than 30 minutes left him shaking with exhaustion. His uniform hung loose on a frame that seemed to shrink a little more each day. But his mind remained sharp, his tactical instincts honed by 4 decades of war. He's going after the base, Dawson said quietly, his finger tracing movements on the map. Hassan's not stupid. He knows we've blinded his observation network. He knows we killed his brother. He knows the guardian angel is making it impossible for him to operate effectively, so he's going to eliminate the source of his problems. He's going to hit FOB Crimson with everything he has. Major Jack Morrison, still recovering from the wounds he had sustained in Sector 7, leaned forward to study the intelligence. Sir, this base is hardened. We've got walls, towers, heavy weapons. An assault on a fortified position would be suicide for them. It would be, Dawson agreed, if they were planning a conventional assault. But look at the pattern. Hassan's been moving mortars into position over the past week. He's stockpiling ammunition. He's brought in foreign fighters from Syria, probably some of the same men who fought alongside ISIS at their peak. This isn't going to be some probe or harassment. This is going to be a coordinated assault designed to overrun us through sheer weight of numbers. Sarah Mitchell stood at the edge of the group, listening, calculating. She had been at FOB Crimson for 2 months now. 2 months of hunting and being hunted. 2 months of watching Dawson deteriorate while pretending not to notice. 2 months of video calls with Emma that broke her heart a little more each time. What's the timeline? She asked. The intelligence officer, a young captain named Rodriguez, pulled up additional reports. 72 hours, give or take. We've intercepted communications suggesting they're waiting for a shipment of heavy weapons. Once those arrive, they'll move. Dawson turned to face the assembled officers, and despite his physical weakness, he projected an aura of command that made everyone in the room stand a little straighter. Then we have 72 hours to turn this base into a fortress that will break them. I want every defensive position reinforced. I want overlapping fields of fire. I want backup plans for our backup plans. And I want our sniper teams positioned where they can do maximum damage when the shooting starts. He looked directly at Sarah. Mitchell, you're going to coordinate the sniper defense. You'll have 3 teams total. Position them where they can cover approaches and eliminate leadership targets. When Hassan comes, I want him to walk into a meat grinder. Yes, sir, Sarah replied. Then more quietly, Sir, are you sure you should be here for this? Your condition. Dawson's expression hardened, not with anger, but with absolute certainty. I'm not leaving, Sarah. This is my last mission, my last chance to make a difference. I've spent 40 years protecting American soldiers, and I'll be damned if I spend my final days in some hospital bed when I could be here, doing what I was born to do. He paused and his voice softened. Besides, I need to see this through. I need to know that when I'm gone, there will be people like you carrying on the work, protecting our boys, being the guardian angels. That's my legacy, Sarah, and I'm not leaving until I'm certain it's secure. The room fell silent. Every officer present understood they were witnessing something profound. A warrior choosing how he would meet his end. A commander refusing to abandon his post even as death stalked him from within. Morrison broke the silence, his voice rough with emotion. Then let's make sure your last mission is one they write about for the next 100 years, sir. Let's show these bastards what happens when they mess with Bull Dawson's soldiers. The next 72 hours passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Sarah worked with Marcus Chen and 2 other sniper teams to identify and fortify firing positions around the base perimeter. They established primary hides, backup positions, and emergency extraction routes. They pre-positioned ammunition, water, and medical supplies. They calculated range cards for every possible approach, marking distances and identifying key terrain features. David Mitchell's Green Beret team reinforced defensive positions, setting up interlocking fields of fire and establishing kill zones where attackers would be channeled into areas where American firepower could devastate them. Engineers laid additional razor wire, strengthened walls, and positioned heavy weapons where they would have maximum effect. On the second day of preparation, Sarah found Dawson alone in the command center late at night, poring over maps by the light of a single lamp. He looked up as she entered, and she could see the pain etched into every line of his face. Can't sleep either? He asked. Too much to think about, Sarah replied, pulling up a chair beside him. Sir, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Dawson set down his pen and gave her his full attention. Go ahead. How much time do you really have? I've seen the way you move when you think no one's watching. The way you grip the edge of the table to stay standing. The medication you take when you think no one notices. How long? Dawson was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed, the sound of a man who had carried a heavy burden alone for too long. The doctors gave me 6 months. That was 4 months ago. The pain is getting worse. The medication barely touches it anymore. Honestly, Sarah, I don't know if I'll make it through this battle, but I'm going to try because this is how a soldier should go out. On his feet, fighting, protecting his men. Sarah felt tears burning at her eyes, but she blinked them back. Dawson would not want tears. He would want strength. You've been like a father to me, sir, more than just a commanding officer or an instructor. You taught me what it means to be a warrior, what it means to protect people. I wouldn't be the soldier I am without you. Dawson reached over and squeezed her hand, his grip surprisingly strong. And you've been the daughter I never had, Sarah. My boys grew up and went their own ways. Never wanted anything to do with the military. But you understood. You got what this life is about. You became everything I hoped a student could become. That's worth more to me than you'll ever know. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, 2 warriors on the eve of battle, sharing a moment that needed no words. Finally, Dawson spoke again. If I don't make it through this, I need you to promise me something. Anything, sir. Promise me you'll keep being the guardian angel. Promise me you'll train the next generation. Pass on what I taught you. Make sure there are always protectors watching over our soldiers. That's all I ask. I promise, sir. I swear it. Dawson nodded, satisfied. Then he pulled out a folder from his desk drawer and handed it to Sarah. I've already written the recommendation for your Medal of Honor. For what you did in Sector 7, 37 kills while under fire from a counter sniper, 18 lives saved. It's the finest piece of soldiering I've seen in my entire career. When this is over, whether I'm here to see it or not, you're getting that medal. You've earned it. Sarah took the folder with trembling hands. The Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration, given for acts of valor above and beyond the call of duty. She had never imagined, never dreamed, that her service would be recognized at that level. Sir, I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept it with pride. Say you'll wear it as a reminder of what you're capable of when soldiers need you most. Say you'll use it to inspire the next generation of guardian angels. Yes, sir, I will. On the morning of the third day, as the sun rose over the Iraqi desert, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, the attack began. It started with mortars, not the sporadic harassment fire that FOB Crimson had endured for months, but a concentrated barrage that turned the sky into a steel rain. 82-millimeter rounds fell in a steady rhythm, hammering defensive positions, cratering roads, sending up geysers of dirt and shrapnel. Sarah was in her primary hide, a reinforced position on the southern wall with clear sight lines over the most likely approach routes. Marcus was beside her, spotting targets through a replacement scope they had requisitioned after Volkov destroyed his previous one. Around the base perimeter, the other sniper teams were similarly positioned, waiting for the assault that would inevitably follow the barrage. The mortars fell for 10 straight minutes, a calculated effort to soften defenses and demoralize the defenders. But the Americans had prepared well. Most soldiers were in hardened bunkers. Equipment was dispersed and protected. When the barrage finally lifted, FOB Crimson was battered but intact. Then came the silence, that eerie, pregnant quiet that precedes every major assault, the calm before the human storm. Sarah scanned the approaches through her scope, her breathing slow and controlled, her mind clear and focused. She could feel it building out there in the city, the massed enemy, the coordinated assault, the final throw of the dice from Hassan al-Masri. Movement, Marcus said quietly. Multiple sectors. This is it. They came in waves exactly as Dawson had predicted. 50 fighters in the first wave, moving with disciplined fire and maneuver tactics. They used smoke grenades to mask their approach, advanced under covering fire from distant positions, and moved with the confidence of men who believed they were about to overrun an American base. Sarah let them get within 600 meters before she engaged. Her first target was an RPG gunner preparing to fire at the main gate. He went down clean, and the RPG clattered from nerveless fingers. Her second shot took out a fighter carrying a radio, cutting off his ability to coordinate with other elements. Around the perimeter, the other American sniper teams opened fire. Machine guns roared to life. The disciplined violence of American defensive firepower met the assault head-on, and the first wave broke against it like water against rock. But Hassan had anticipated losses. The second wave came before the first had even fully retreated. 80 fighters this time, spread across multiple approach routes, forcing the defenders to split their attention and their fire. Sarah worked methodically, engaging high-value targets. Leaders, heavy weapons teams, anyone carrying communications gear. Each shot was calculated, precise, designed to maximize the chaos and confusion among the attacking force. Her rifle grew hot in her hands, brass casings piled up around her position. The familiar ritual of combat became a meditation, a focusing of everything she was into the sacred task of protecting the Americans fighting beside her. The battle raged for 90 minutes. Wave after wave of attackers surged toward the base, and wave after wave was cut down by interlocking fields of fire and the lethal accuracy of American marksmanship. Bodies piled up in the approaches. The wounded crawled back toward the city, leaving blood trails in the sand. Then the enemy changed tactics. A suicide truck bomb screamed toward the eastern gate, its bed packed with explosives, its driver committed to martyrdom. David Mitchell's team engaged it with an AT-4 anti-tank weapon, detonating the truck 100 meters from the wall. The explosion was massive, a rolling fireball that sent a mushroom cloud of smoke and debris into the sky. But the explosion also provided cover. Under its concealment, a specialized assault team breached a section of the eastern wall that had been weakened by the mortar barrage. 20 fighters poured through the gap before anyone realized what had happened. They were inside the wire, inside the base. Close quarters combat that negated many of the defensive advantages the Americans had prepared. Over the radio, Sarah heard Dawson's voice, calm and controlled despite the chaos. Eastern Sector breach. All units converge. We cannot let them establish a foothold inside the perimeter. David's Green Berets moved to respond, but they were engaged with another assault on the western wall. The Rangers were committed to defending the northern approach. For a critical 60 seconds, there was no one in position to stop the infiltrators from penetrating deeper into the base. No one except Colonel William Dawson. Sarah watched through her scope, helpless to intervene, as Dawson emerged from the command center with an M4 rifle and moved toward the breach. He moved stiffly, pain evident in every step, but his weapon handling was textbook perfect, the muscle memory of 40 years overriding the weakness of his failing body. 3 Green Berets fell in beside him, providing security as they advanced toward the infiltrators. Sarah wanted to scream at him to fall back, to let the younger soldiers handle it, to preserve himself, but she knew he would not. This was his base, his soldiers, his responsibility. The firefight that erupted was brutal in close range. Dawson and his small team met the infiltrators in a maze of buildings and storage containers. Muzzle flashes strobed in the shadows. The sharp crack of rifles echoed off concrete walls. Men shouted, men screamed, men died. Sarah could not get a clear shot. The combat was too close, too chaotic, friend and foe intermixed in a deadly dance. All she could do was watch and pray. Dawson moved through the fight like the warrior he had always been, engaging targets with controlled pairs, moving tactically from cover to cover, directing his small team with hand signals and terse commands. He killed 3 enemy fighters in the first 30 seconds, his decades of experience compensating for his physical limitations. But experience could only do so much. As Dawson moved to clear a blind corner, Hassan al-Masri himself stepped out with an AK-47. The two commanders faced each other for a frozen moment, the dying American colonel and the rising terrorist leader. 2 men on opposite sides of an eternal conflict. 2 warriors who understood that this moment would define them both. Hassan fired first. 3 rounds, center mass, hitting Dawson's body armor with impacts that Sarah could hear even from 300 meters away. The armor held, but the force of the impacts drove Dawson backward. His weakened body, ravaged by cancer, could not absorb the shock the way a healthy soldier's would have. He fell, hard, his rifle clattering from his hands. Hassan stepped forward, raising his weapon for the kill shot. Sarah's world narrowed to the crosshairs of her scope. 320 meters, no wind, clear line of sight. Hassan al-Masri's head centered perfectly in her reticle. But before she could fire, Dawson moved. Despite his injuries, despite the cancer, despite everything his body had endured, Bull Dawson lunged forward and grabbed Hassan's legs, dragging the terrorist leader down. They grappled on the ground, 2 men fighting for their lives with desperate intensity. Hassan was younger, stronger, healthier. But Dawson had 4 decades of close combat experience and the absolute certainty that this was his last fight. Dawson got his hands around Hassan's throat and squeezed with every ounce of strength remaining in his body. Hassan clawed at Dawson's face, gouging, trying to break free. For 15 seconds they struggled, locked in mortal combat, neither willing to yield. Then Hassan managed to grab a knife from his belt and drove it into Dawson's side, below the body armor, sinking the blade deep. Dawson gasped but did not release his grip. If anything, he squeezed harder, pouring the last of his life into strangling the man who had killed so many Americans. Hassan's struggles grew weaker. His face turned purple, his eyes bulged. And then he went limp. Dawson held on for another 10 seconds, making absolutely certain. Only when he was satisfied that Hassan was dead did he finally release his grip and fall back, the knife still protruding from his side. Sarah was already moving, abandoning her position, racing toward the command center area. Marcus shouted something behind her, but she did not hear it. All she could think about was getting to Dawson, getting him medical help, saving the man who had saved so many others. She reached him just as David's team secured the area. Dawson lay on his back, blood spreading across his uniform from the knife wound, his breathing shallow and labored. But his eyes were clear, and when he saw Sarah, he managed a small smile. "Got him," Dawson whispered. "Hassan's dead. Mission accomplished." Don't talk, sir, Sarah said, kneeling beside him, pressing her hands against the wound to slow the bleeding. Medic! We need a medic now. Too late for that, Dawson said, his voice fading. Listen to me, Sarah. You need to listen. Sir, please, just hold on. Help is coming. Dawson reached up with a bloody hand and gripped Sarah's arm with surprising strength. 40 years. 40 years I've been doing this job. Protecting soldiers. Teaching others to protect. And you, Sarah Mitchell, you are the finest student I ever had. The best guardian angel I ever trained. I'm so proud of you. So damn proud. Tears streamed down Sarah's face, and this time she did not try to stop them. You can't leave, sir. I still need you. The soldiers need you. No, Dawson said gently. They need you now. You're ready. You've been ready. Time for me to pass the torch and let you carry it forward. His breathing became more labored. Blood frothed at the corners of his mouth. The medic arrived and started working, but everyone there knew it was futile. Kibam. The knife had done too much damage. The cancer had weakened him too much. This was the end. Tell Margaret, Dawson whispered, his voice barely audible now. Tell her I love her. Tell her I went out the way I wanted, fighting, protecting, making a difference one last time. I will, sir, I promise. And Sarah, remember what I taught you. A sniper is a guardian angel. Protect them, save them, be the miracle they pray for. Dawson's eyes lost focus. His breathing stopped. And Bull Dawson, warrior and mentor and legend, died as he had lived. On his feet, in combat, protecting American soldiers. Sarah sat back, her hands covered in his blood, and felt something break inside her. Grief and rage and a terrible sense of loss that threatened to overwhelm everything else. Dawson had been more than a commanding officer. He had been a father figure, a mentor, the man who had shaped her into the soldier she had become. And now he was gone. David appeared beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. Sarah, I'm sorry. I know what he meant to you. She looked up at her husband, her face streaked with tears and blood and Iraqi dust. Volkov, she said, her voice cold and hard. Where is he? David hesitated. Sarah, now's not the time. You need to process this. You need to... Where is he? Marcus appeared, his face grim. East Ridge, 800 meters. I spotted his hide when I was tracking the assault. He's been watching the whole battle, probably waiting to see the outcome before he makes his move. Sarah stood, and David could see something frightening in her eyes. Not rage exactly, something colder, more focused. The look of a hunter who had found her prey and would not be denied. Sarah, David said carefully, you're not thinking clearly right now. You're emotional. That's when mistakes happen. She turned to look at him, and her voice was absolutely steady. Volkov killed Marcus's scope. He nearly killed me. He's working for the people who killed Hassan's brother, which means he's part of the reason Hassan attacked this base, which means he's part of the reason Dawson is dead. I'm going to end him, and I'm doing it now. She moved toward her rifle, but David stepped in front of her. At least take backup. Let me come with you. No, this is between me and him. Sniper versus sniper. The way it should be. She picked up her rifle and checked the chamber. 1 round already loaded, 20 more in the magazine. More than enough. Sarah, Marcus said quietly, he's expecting you. This could be a trap. I don't care. She moved toward the eastern wall, toward the ridge where Volkov waited, and neither David nor Marcus tried to stop her. They understood that this was something she needed to do. Not for revenge exactly. For closure. For justice. For the hundreds of soldiers Volkov had endangered with his betrayal. Sarah climbed to the highest point on the eastern wall and scanned the ridge through her scope. It took 30 seconds to find him. Volkov had positioned himself well, using the terrain for concealment, but Sarah knew what to look for. The slight discoloration where his camouflage netting caught the light differently. The unnatural straight line where his rifle barrel protruded from cover. 830 meters. Uphill shot. Wind at 5 miles per hour, quartering from the left. Temperature dropping as the sun set, which would affect the air density and bullet trajectory. It was not an impossible shot, but it was difficult, and Volkov would be watching for her, waiting for her to expose herself, ready to fire the moment she did. Sarah thought about Dawson, about his last words, about the 40 years he had spent training soldiers to protect other soldiers, about the legacy he had entrusted to her. She thought about Emma, waiting at home, drawing pictures of her mommy, the guardian angel, about the promise she had made to come home. She thought about those 18 Rangers she had saved in Sector 7, about the countless others she had protected over 2 months of deployment, about the sacred duty she had sworn to uphold. And she thought about Viktor Volkov, the mercenary who had betrayed everything a sniper should stand for, who had turned the guardian angel's rifle into a tool of assassination and greed. This ended now. Sarah settled into her shooting position, her body conforming to the hard concrete of the wall, her breathing slowing, her heart rate dropping into that calm zone where the best shots lived. She found Volkov through her scope. He was scanning toward the base, his Dragunov rifle steady, his discipline evident even from this distance. He was good, probably the best she had ever faced. But good was not good enough. Not today. Not against Sarah Mitchell, trained by Bull Dawson, motivated by grief and duty and the absolute certainty that justice needed to be served. She made her calculations. Wind drift, bullet drop at 830 meters, the upward angle, the cooling air. All of it processed in 2 seconds, the math becoming instinct, the instinct becoming certainty. Volkov shifted, and for a moment, Sarah thought she saw him looking directly at her position. Did he see her? Did he know she was there? It did not matter. Sarah took a breath, let half of it out, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle recoiled. The bullet flew, 830 meters, 1.5 seconds of flight time, an eternity compressed into a moment. Through her scope, Sarah watched the round impact. Volkov's head snapped back, and his body went limp across his rifle. No movement, no final shot, no dramatic last stand. Just a professional doing her job with cold, precise efficiency. "Target down," Sarah said into her radio. "Volkov is dead." She stayed on the scope for another 30 seconds, confirming the kill, watching for any sign of movement. Nothing. Viktor Volkov, legendary Russian sniper, mercenary traitor, was dead in his hide, killed by the guardian angel he had hunted for 2 months. Sarah lowered her rifle and sat back against the wall, utterly exhausted. The adrenaline was wearing off now, and in its place came a crushing wave of emotion. Grief for Dawson, relief that Volkov was dead, fear about what came next. She pulled out her phone and opened the photos Margaret had sent over the past weeks. Emma smiling, Emma drawing, Emma sleeping with her stuffed rabbit, Emma living a normal, innocent life 7,000 miles away, while her mother fought and killed in a desert war zone. Sarah thought about Dawson's last words, about being ready, about carrying the torch forward, about being the guardian angel that soldiers prayed for. She was ready. She had proven that beyond any doubt. But being ready and wanting to continue were two different things. The battle for Phobie Crimson was winding down. The enemy assault had broken. Hassan was dead. Volkov was dead. The immediate threats were neutralized. But there were still 11 months left on Sarah's deployment. 11 months of hunting and being hunted. 11 months of Emma going to bed wondering if her mother would come home. 11 months of carrying the weight of every life taken and every life saved. Sarah did not know if she could do it. Did not know if the cost was worth it anymore. David found her there an hour later, sitting alone on the wall as the sun set over the desert, painting the sky the color of blood and fire. He sat beside her without speaking, and they watched the darkness come together. Finally, Sarah broke the silence. He died the way he wanted, fighting, protecting his soldiers, making a difference one last time. Yes, he did. I don't know if I can keep doing this, David. I don't know if I'm strong enough to carry what he's asked me to carry. David took her hand, his grip warm and solid and anchoring. You don't have to decide tonight. Tonight we mourn a warrior. Tonight we honor his sacrifice. Tomorrow we figure out what comes next. Sarah nodded and leaned her head against her husband's shoulder, drawing strength from his presence. Below them, soldiers were securing the base, treating wounded and counting the cost of the battle. 43 enemy killed, 12 Americans wounded, 1 killed in action. Colonel William Dawson, Medal of Honor recipient, legendary sniper, beloved mentor, gone but not forgotten. His legacy carried forward by every soldier he had trained, every life he had saved, every guardian angel he had inspired. Sarah thought about the promise she had made, to keep being the guardian angel, to train the next generation, to pass on what Dawson had taught her. It was a heavy burden, perhaps too heavy for one person to carry. But as she sat on that wall watching the stars come out over the Iraqi desert, Sarah Mitchell made a decision. She would carry it, not because she wanted to, not because it was easy, but because Bull Dawson had asked her to, because American soldiers needed protection, because guardian angels did not quit when the weight got heavy. They carried on. They stood watch. They protected the innocent and destroyed the guilty. And that was exactly what Sarah Mitchell intended to do. For Dawson, for Emma, for every soldier who would whisper a prayer for a miracle when death came calling. The guardian angel was listening, and she would answer. The memorial service for Colonel William Dawson was held 3 days after the battle for FOB Crimson. The base chapel, a simple structure of concrete and corrugated metal, could barely contain the crowd that gathered to honor the fallen warrior. Soldiers from every unit on base attended, along with officers who flew in specifically for the ceremony. Even the base commander from Baghdad made the trip, recognizing that this was not just another memorial service, but the passing of a legend. Sarah Mitchell stood at attention in the front row, her dress uniform crisp and perfect, her face composed despite the grief that threatened to crack her professional veneer. Beside her stood Marcus Chen, still bearing the scars from Volkov's attack, and David Mitchell, who had flown back from a mission specifically to be present for this moment. The chaplain spoke about duty and sacrifice, about warriors who gave everything in service to their country. But his words, though well-meaning, felt insufficient to capture who Bull Dawson had been. How could you sum up 40 years of service in a 20-minute eulogy? How could you quantify the lives he had saved, the soldiers he had trained, the legacy he had built? When the chaplain finished, the base commander stepped forward and began reading the citation for Dawson's Medal of Honor. The award was posthumous, approved with unprecedented speed through channels that recognized the magnitude of what Dawson had done in his final moments. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. Colonel William Dawson, while suffering from terminal illness and facing overwhelming enemy forces, personally led a counterattack against infiltrators who had breached the base defenses. Despite being mortally wounded, Colonel Dawson engaged in hand-to-hand combat with the enemy commander, sacrificing his own life to eliminate a high-value target and protect American soldiers under his command. The words echoed in the chapel, official and formal, but Sarah heard something else beneath them. She heard Dawson's voice from that final conversation. "You're ready? Time for me to pass the torch." She heard his last words, whispered through blood and pain. "A sniper is a guardian angel." After the ceremony, as soldiers filed past Dawson's flag-draped casket to pay their final respects, Sarah remained behind. She approached the casket alone, placed her hand on the smooth wood, and spoke quietly. "I'll keep my promise, sir. I'll be the guardian angel. I'll train the next generation. I'll make sure your legacy lives on." She stood there for a long moment, saying goodbye to the man who had shaped her into the soldier she had become, the mentor who had been like a father, the legend who had chosen to die with a rifle in his hands rather than waste away in a hospital bed. Then she stepped back, rendered a final salute, and walked out into the harsh Iraqi sunlight to continue the work Dawson had started. That evening, Sarah received a video message that had been recorded before Dawson deployed and held by the base chaplain with instructions to deliver it in the event of his death. The message was addressed to her specifically. Sarah sat alone in her quarters and pressed play. Dawson's face appeared on the screen, recorded weeks earlier when he still had some color in his cheeks, before the cancer had stolen the last of his strength. He looked directly into the camera as if he could see across time and space to this moment. "Sarah, if you're watching this, it means I didn't make it home. It means I died doing what I loved, protecting soldiers, serving my country. I need you to know that I have no regrets. None. This is exactly how I wanted to go out." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I've spent 40 years as a sniper, 40 years watching over people who didn't know I was there, 40 years being the guardian angel. And in all that time, I never trained anyone better than you. You have a gift, Sarah, not just the shooting, though God knows you're the finest marksman I've ever seen. You have the heart for this work. You understand that we don't kill because we enjoy it. We kill to protect. We kill to save lives." Dawson leaned forward slightly, his expression intense. "The work we do is hard. It takes a toll. You'll carry the weight of every life you've taken for the rest of your days. But you'll also carry the knowledge that you saved people, that Rangers went home to their families because you were watching over them. That's worth the wait, Sarah. That's worth everything." He sat back and his expression softened. "I asked you to promise me something, to keep being the guardian angel, to train the next generation. I need you to understand what that means. It means you'll have students like Elena Torres who look up to you the way you looked up to me. It means you'll pass on what I taught you, and they'll pass it on to others, and the chain will continue. That's how we defeat death, Sarah, not by living forever, but by making sure the things we believe in survive us. Dawson's voice grew quieter, more personal. Tell Margaret I died well. Tell her I loved her every day of our 40 years together. Tell her not to mourn too long because I'm exactly where I wanted to be. He smiled then, that slight upturn of the lips that Sarah had seen 1,000 times when she had executed a particularly difficult shot. And Sarah, one more thing. Be proud of what you've done. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for being good at this job. You're not a killer. You're a protector. You're the guardian angel, and the world needs guardian angels more than you know. The video ended, and Sarah sat in the darkness of her quarters, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of despair or regret, but tears of gratitude. Gratitude that she had known Bull Dawson. Gratitude that he had chosen her as his legacy. Gratitude that she had been present when he made his final stand. She wiped her eyes and opened her laptop to compose an email to Margaret Dawson, fulfilling the promise to tell her that her husband had died well, protecting soldiers, being the warrior he had always been. The response came 3 hours later, despite the time difference. Margaret's words were simple but profound. Thank you for being with him at the end. Thank you for carrying forward what he built. He loved you like the daughter we never had. Make him proud, Sarah. Keep being the guardian angel. Sarah closed the laptop and sat in silence, feeling the weight of the legacy settle onto her shoulders. It was heavy, yes, but it was also honorable. It was also right. The remaining months of Sarah's deployment passed in a blur of operations and training missions. With Hassan and Volkov eliminated, the enemy's coordinated attacks collapsed. Small pockets of resistance remained, but they lacked the leadership and sophistication that had made them so dangerous. American casualties dropped to near zero. Patrols completed their missions without contact. The northern sector, which had been a killing field months earlier, became almost quiet. Sarah continued to provide overwatch, but increasingly her role shifted toward training. She worked with the new sniper teams rotating into theater, passing on the lessons Dawson had taught her, refining their techniques, instilling in them the philosophy that had defined her career. A sniper is a guardian angel. Protect, don't just destroy, save lives through precision. Her final deployment statistics were entered into the official record and immediately classified at a high level. 219 confirmed enemy kills. 95 American soldiers directly saved through her interventions. 0 friendly fire incidents. 0 missed shots when it mattered most. The numbers were extraordinary, unprecedented for a single deployment. But to Sarah, they were more than statistics. Each confirmed kill represented a threat eliminated, a potential ambush prevented, a life saved. Each American soldier she had protected was a mother's son, a father, a husband, a brother who would go home instead of coming home in a flag-draped casket. That was what mattered. That was what made the weight worth carrying. When her replacement arrived, a young staff sergeant from North Carolina with impressive credentials and a hungry look that reminded Sarah of herself years earlier, she spent 2 weeks conducting a thorough turnover. She showed him the best firing positions, the most likely enemy approach routes, the subtle signs that distinguished a civilian from a combatant. She passed on everything Dawson had taught her, everything she had learned in 12 months of combat. On her final day at Phobie Crimson, Sarah walked the perimeter one last time, visiting the places where she had made her most important shots. The rooftop where she had killed 37 enemy fighters in 4 minutes. The wall where she had eliminated Volkov. The spot where Dawson had died strangling Hassan al-Masri with his last breath. Each location held memories, some painful, some proud, all significant. These places had shaped her, tested her, proven her she would never forget them. David found her standing at the memorial marker that had been erected for Dawson, a simple stone with his name, rank, and the dates of his service. "You ready to go home?" David asked quietly. Sarah nodded. "Yes, I'm ready." "No regrets?" "Not about the mission, not about the work, but I've missed Emma more than I can say. I've missed being a mother. I've missed normal life." David put his arm around her shoulders. "Then let's go reclaim that life. Let's go home." The flight back to the United States took 26 hours with refueling stops and aircraft changes. Sarah spent most of it sleeping, the deep, exhausted sleep of someone who had pushed themselves beyond normal human limits for 12 months straight. When she finally woke as they approached American airspace, she felt different, lighter somehow. The weight she had carried was still there, but it felt more manageable now that she was heading home. The plane landed at Fort Benning in the early morning, the Georgia sun painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. As Sarah stepped off the aircraft, she saw them waiting at the edge of the tarmac. Margaret Dawson standing straight and dignified despite her recent widowhood, and beside her, bouncing with barely contained excitement, Emma Mitchell. Sarah had promised herself she would maintain military bearing, that she would walk off that plane with the same professional composure she had maintained throughout the deployment. That promise lasted exactly 3 seconds. Emma broke free from Margaret's hand and ran toward her mother, her 6-year-old legs pumping as fast as they could carry her. Sarah dropped her duffel bag and ran to meet her daughter, and when they collided, she swept Emma up in her arms and held her so tightly that Emma squeaked in protest. "Mommy, you're home! You're really home!" Sarah buried her face in Emma's hair and breathed in the scent of strawberry shampoo and childhood innocence and everything she had been fighting for. "I'm home, baby. I'm home and I'm never leaving again." It was a promise she knew she could keep. Her deployment was over, her obligation fulfilled. She had done her duty, paid her dues, proven herself beyond any reasonable doubt. Now it was time to be a mother again. David joined them, wrapping his arms around both his wife and daughter, and for a long moment the Mitchell family stood on that tarmac in Georgia, reconnected after a year of separation and fear and sacrifice. Margaret approached more slowly, giving them their moment before she stepped forward and embraced Sarah. "Welcome home, dear. Bill would be so proud of what you accomplished." "I tried to honor his legacy," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. "You did more than that. You became the legacy. You became everything he hoped you would be." The awards ceremony was held 3 weeks later at Fort Benning, in front of a formation of soldiers and a crowd of family members and media. Sarah stood at attention in her dress uniform as the commanding general read the citation for her Silver Star. "For gallantry in action against an enemy of the United States." Staff Sergeant Sarah Mitchell, while providing overwatch for friendly forces, engaged and eliminated 37 enemy combatants in a 4-minute period, while simultaneously under fire from a hostile counter-sniper. Her actions directly resulted in the preservation of 18 American lives and the prevention of a catastrophic tactical defeat. The general pinned the Silver Star to her uniform, and the crowd applauded. Sarah remained at attention, humbled by the recognition, but uncomfortable with the attention. She had not done it for medals or accolades. She had done it because American soldiers needed her. But there was a second award, this one even more significant. The general held up the Medal of Honor, the highest decoration for valor that the nation could bestow. The blue ribbon and the gold star seemed to glow in the afternoon sunlight. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of her life above and beyond the call of duty. Staff Sergeant Sarah Mitchell, with complete disregard for her own safety, maintained her position under accurate enemy fire to provide life-saving support to surrounded American forces. Her exceptional marksmanship, courage under fire, and unwavering dedication to her fellow soldiers exemplify the highest traditions of military service. The general placed the Medal of Honor around Sarah's neck, and the weight of it was both literal and symbolic. She was joining a brotherhood of warriors who had gone beyond duty, who had risked everything to save others, who had embodied the very best of American military service. In the crowd, Sarah could see Emma watching with wide eyes, not fully understanding what was happening, but knowing it was important. Beside Emma, Margaret Dawson stood with tears streaming down her face, proud and heartbroken in equal measure. After the ceremony, after the congratulations and the photographs and the formal obligations, Sarah finally had a quiet moment alone with Margaret. "Bill put you in for this before he died," Margaret said, touching the Medal of Honor gently. "He wrote the citation himself. He told me that if anyone deserved it, you did. I wish he was here to see it. He is, dear. He's watching, and he's proud beyond words." They stood together in comfortable silence, two women bound by their connection to a warrior who had shaped both their lives, whose legacy would continue through the soldiers Sarah would train, the lives she would save, the torch she would carry forward. Life after deployment was strange and wonderful and occasionally jarring. Sarah found herself standing in grocery stores, momentarily disoriented by the abundance and normalcy. She would wake at 3 in the morning, reaching for a rifle that was not there, her heart racing as she scanned for threats that did not exist. But slowly, day by day, she readjusted. She learned to be a mother again, reading bedtime stories to Emma, helping with homework, attending parent-teacher conferences at the elementary school. She learned to be a wife again, reconnecting with David without the constant specter of deployment looming over them. And she learned to be Sarah Mitchell again, not just the guardian angel, not just the sniper, but a whole person with interests and hobbies and a life beyond the scope. 6 months after returning from Iraq, Sarah received orders assigning her as the head instructor for the advanced sniper course at Fort Benning. It was exactly what Dawson had wanted for her, exactly what she had promised him she would do. On her first day in the new role, she stood before a class of 30 students, ranging from young privates fresh out of basic training to seasoned sergeants looking to add sniper qualification to their skill set. And standing in the front row, her posture perfect, her attention absolute, was Private Elena Torres. Sarah felt something click into place when she saw Elena. The circle was completing. Dawson had trained Sarah. Sarah would train Elena. Elena would train the next generation. The legacy would continue. "Good morning," Sarah began, her voice carrying easily across the classroom. "I'm Major Sarah Mitchell, and for the next 12 weeks, I'm going to teach you to be snipers. But before we talk about ballistics or wind reading or any of the technical skills you'll need, I want to tell you what a sniper really is." She paused, letting the silence build. A sniper is not a killer. A sniper is a guardian angel. Your job is not to take lives, though you will have to do that. Your job is to save lives, to watch over soldiers who don't know you're there, to be the invisible protector who stands between American soldiers and the enemies who want to kill them. She saw understanding dawning on some faces, confusion on others. That was fine. Understanding would come with time and training. This is hard work, the hardest you'll ever do. It will test you physically, mentally, and morally. You'll be asked to make shots that seem impossible. You'll be asked to stay calm while people are shooting at you. You'll be asked to take lives in the service of saving lives. And you'll have to carry the weight of those decisions for the rest of your days. Sarah met Elena's eyes and saw the same hunger, the same determination that she had felt years ago when Dawson had given a similar speech. But if you can do this work, if you can be the guardian angel, you'll save lives. You'll make a difference that ripples out in ways you can't even imagine. Every soldier you protect goes home to a family. Every threat you eliminate is one less ambush, one less casualty, one less flag-draped casket. She let that sink in before continuing. "My mentor, Colonel William Dawson, taught me everything I know about being a sniper. He taught me the technical skills, yes. But more importantly, he taught me the philosophy. He taught me that we don't do this job because we love killing. We do it because we love protecting. There's a difference, a crucial, fundamental difference, and if you can't understand that difference, you don't belong here." After the class, Elena approached Sarah with the same nervous energy she had shown months earlier at Fort Benning. "Ma'am, I just want to say thank you for getting me into this course, for giving me this opportunity." Sarah studied the young woman, seeing so much of her younger self, the eagerness, the determination, the desire to matter. "I didn't get you into this course, Torres. Your marksmanship scores got you here. Your dedication got you here. I just made sure the right people saw your potential. Still, ma'am, I won't let you down. I'll work harder than anyone else. I'll prove I deserve to be here." Sarah smiled, remembering saying almost identical words to Dawson years ago. "I know you will. But remember, it's not about proving yourself to me or to anyone else. It's about being ready when soldiers need you. It's about being the guardian angel. Everything else is secondary." Over the next 12 weeks, Sarah threw herself into training with the same intensity she had brought to combat. She pushed her students hard, demanding perfection, accepting nothing less than their absolute best. But she also taught them the philosophy Dawson had instilled in her, the why beneath the how, the purpose beneath the technique. Elena excelled. She absorbed lessons like a sponge, practiced until her hands bled, and demonstrated the same single-minded focus that had characterized Sarah's own path to excellence. By the end of the course, Elena was scoring in the top 3%, hitting targets at ranges that most experienced snipers struggled with. On the final day of training, Sarah gathered the graduating class and delivered her last lecture. "You're ready, not perfect. You'll never be perfect. But you're ready to do the work, ready to be the guardian angels that soldiers pray for when bullets are flying and hope is running thin." She paused, making eye contact with each student. "Some of you will deploy to combat zones. Some of you will spend your careers teaching others. All of you will carry the responsibility of knowing that your skills can save lives or take them. That's the burden of the sniper. That's what makes this job different from any other in the military. Sarah reached down and picked up a rifle case that sat beside the podium. She opened it to reveal Dawson's personal rifle, the weapon he had carried in Vietnam, the symbol of his legacy. This rifle belonged to Colonel William Dawson. He gave it to me before his final mission. He told me to use it to protect others, just as he had, and when the time was right, to pass it along to the next guardian angel. She looked at Elena, who stood at attention with tears forming in her eyes. Private Elena Torres, front and center. Elena marched forward, her movements crisp and precise. Sarah lifted the rifle from its case and held it out. This rifle represents 40 years of service from Colonel Dawson and 12 months of combat from me. It represents hundreds of lives saved through precision and dedication. I'm passing it to you now, Torres, not because you're the best shot, though you're certainly one of them, but because you understand what we're really doing. You understand that we're protectors, not killers. You understand that we're guardian angels. Elena took the rifle with trembling hands, overwhelmed by the honor, the responsibility, the weight of the legacy she was now part of. I won't let you down, ma'am. I swear it. I know you won't. Just remember what I taught you. Remember what Colonel Dawson believed. A sniper is a guardian angel. Everything else flows from that. That evening, Sarah drove home to the ranch in Texas where Emma and David were waiting. The Georgia sun was setting, painting the sky in familiar shades of orange and red, the same color she had seen over Iraqi deserts, over firing ranges, over battlefields where she had made the shots that defined her career. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the training, the deployment, the 37 shots in 4 minutes that had saved 18 lives. The loss of Dawson, the weight of 219 confirmed kills balanced against 95 lives saved. It had been worth it, all of it. Every sacrifice, every night away from Emma, every moment of fear and doubt and exhaustion. Because she had made a difference, she had saved lives, she had honored Dawson's legacy and built her own. She pulled into the ranch driveway and saw Emma playing in the yard with David pushing her on the tire swing that hung from the old oak tree. Normal. Beautifully, perfectly normal. Emma saw her tumbler and jumped off the swing mid-arc, running toward the car with arms outstretched. Sarah caught her daughter and spun her around, both of them laughing. And in that moment, Sarah understood something profound. She had been the guardian angel for soldiers in Iraq, but Emma had been her guardian angel here at home. The reason to come back. The purpose behind the sacrifice. The light that guided her through the darkness. Mommy, guess what? I got an A on my history test. We learned about soldiers and heroes, and I told everyone my mommy is a hero. Sarah set Emma down and knelt to her level, looking into eyes that held innocence and pride in equal measure. I'm not a hero, sweetheart. I'm just a soldier who did her job. Emma frowned. That serious expression children get when they know adults are being modest. Mrs. Henderson at school showed us the newspaper. About your medal. About how you saved all those people. That's what heroes do, Mommy. They save people. Sarah pulled Emma close, breathing in the scent of childhood and home and everything she had fought to protect. Then I guess I'll accept hero, but only if you understand that the real heroes are the ones who wait at home. The families who support soldiers while they're away. People like you and Daddy and Grandma Margaret. You're heroes too. Emma seemed satisfied with that answer. She took Sarah's hand and started pulling her toward the house. Come on! I made you a welcome home picture. It's got you and me and Daddy and a big rainbow. Sarah let herself be pulled along, glancing back at David, who followed with a smile that spoke of contentment and pride and the quiet joy of having his family whole again. That night, after Emma had been tucked into bed and the ranch had settled into the peaceful quiet of rural Texas, Sarah sat on the back porch with David, watching the stars come out. Do you miss it? David asked. The action, the adrenaline, being the guardian angel. Sarah thought about the question seriously. Did she miss the intensity of combat, the clarity of purpose, the knowledge that her skills were being used at the highest level? Sometimes, she admitted, there's a part of me that will always be a sniper, that will always calculate ranges and read wind conditions and look for firing positions. But I don't miss the deployment. I don't miss being away from Emma. I don't miss the weight of knowing that people's lives depend on me never making a mistake. She paused, gathering her thoughts. What I do miss is Dawson. I miss having him to talk to learn from, to share this burden with, but in a way, he's still here. Every time I teach a class, I'm passing on what he taught me. Every time Elena or one of my other students makes a difficult shot, that's Dawson's legacy continuing. That's how we defeat death, David. Not by living forever, but by making sure the things we believe in outlive us. David took her hand, his grip warm and solid. He'd be proud of you, of what you've become, of how you're honoring his memory. I hope so. God, I hope so. They sat in comfortable silence. Husband and wife, warriors and parents, two people who had seen the worst that war could offer and chosen to build something beautiful in the aftermath. 5 years later, Sarah stood in Arlington National Cemetery at a grave marked with a simple white headstone. Colonel William Dawson, Medal of Honor recipient, beloved husband, legendary warrior. She came here twice a year, once on the anniversary of his death and once on Veterans Day, to pay her respects and update him on how the legacy was progressing. Elena made staff sergeant, Sarah said quietly as if Dawson could hear. She deployed to Africa last year and performed brilliantly. Saved a Marine platoon with precision fire at 1,100 meters. You would have been proud of her, sir. She's everything we hoped she would be. Sarah knelt and placed fresh flowers on the grave. I've trained 200 students now, snipers serving all over the world. Every one of them knows your philosophy. Every one of them understands that we're guardian angels, not killers. Your legacy is living on through them, sir. Through me. Through everyone you touched. She stood and rendered a salute, holding it for a long moment. Thank you for everything you taught me. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for showing me what it means to be a warrior. I'll keep training them, sir. I'll keep passing on what you gave me. That's my promise. That's my duty. That's my honor. As Sarah walked back to her car, she thought about the journey she had traveled. From a young soldier eager to prove herself, to a combat veteran with the Medal of Honor, to an instructor shaping the next generation of guardian angels. The weight she carried had not disappeared. She still woke some nights, remembering the faces in her scope. Still heard the radio chatter from Sector 7, still felt the recoil of the rifle that had killed 219 enemy combatants. But she also remembered the 18 Rangers who went home because of her, the 95 lives saved, the students who would go on to save more lives, the chain of protection that stretched backward to Dawson and forward through generations yet unborn. That was worth the wait. That was worth everything. Sarah drove home to her family, to Emma, who was now 11 and already talking about military service, to David, who had retired from the Green Berets and now taught tactical courses at Fort Benning, to the life they had built together. She thought about Dawson's final words. A sniper is a guardian angel. She had been that guardian angel. She would continue to be that guardian angel, though now her mission was training rather than direct combat. The work continued. The legacy grew. The chain remained unbroken. And somewhere in some future war zone that Sarah could not yet imagine, a young sniper trained by one of her students would look through a scope and make a shot that saved American lives. Would be the invisible protector watching over soldiers who did not know they were being watched. Would be the miracle that desperate men prayed for when death came calling. The guardian angels would always be there, always watching, always protecting. That was Dawson's legacy. That was Sarah's promise. That was the truth that made all the sacrifice worthwhile. She was the guardian angel, and the mission never truly ended. It just passed from one generation to the next, carried forward by warriors who understood that the highest calling was not to destroy, but to protect. Not to kill, but to save. Not to take life, but to preserve it through precision and dedication, and the absolute refusal to let American soldiers die when there was something, anything that could be done to protect them. Sarah Mitchell drove through the Georgia evening, heading home to her family, carrying the weight of her service with pride and the certainty that when the next generation needed guardian angels, they would be ready. Because she had trained them, because Dawson had trained her, because the chain remained unbroken. And somewhere in the gathering darkness, guardian angels stood watch over American soldiers, invisible and vigilant. The miracles that answered prayers whispered in desperate moments. Always watching, always protecting, always ready. The mission continued. The legacy endured. The guardian angels never stopped their watch. And